In New York, I'm in a safe state. So would I vote for Cornel West in New York? Yes, because I have a 95% agreement with him on policy, and I think it would be nice to get the Green Party in a position where if they become more viable because we get ranked choice voting or something, it'd be nice to grow their popularity a little bit. And when we get ranked choice voting, I think they kind of automatically become a lot more viable. So I'd like to help out in that process. But if I'm in a swing state and it's Biden versus Trump, I'm at the point now where I don't even think it's a tough call. I would definitely vote for Biden, because either in that situation, even if other people are running, either the Democrat or the Republican is going to win. And in my estimation, Biden has definitely passed what I would describe as my bare minimum purity test. And I think if it's him or Trump, or even him or DeSantis or anybody, he just blows them out of the water. And so I think I'd happily vote for Biden in that instance. Your response?
So I similarly was voting for Jill Stein in New York in 2016.
I did the same.
And I also happen to believe that strategically it makes the most sense to apply pressure to the Democratic Party by voting for not Biden in a primary. Marianne Williamson is obviously the most progressive candidate in the primary, and then vote for Cornel West in the general. And I know there are a lot of people in my audience who are frustrated by that plan because they think that it takes something away from Cornel West's run, or it affirms the Democratic Party in some way to vote for Marianne Williamson running as a Democrat. I don't feel that way. I feel it's a little hypocritical to have that position, given that we all just enthusiastically voted for Bernie twice in the primary the last two rounds. You can make a distinction saying that Bernie was an independent, and he always identified as an independent, and Marianne Williamson doesn't have that kind of cloak of distance from the Democratic Party. You can say what you want. I don't see those things as mutually exclusive in the least. So that is also my plan. I differ from you only insofar as that I would say it's a more difficult choice in a swing state to decide what you're going to do. But I frankly respect people who feel comfortable. It has not been something that I have to contend with, but I respect people who feel comfortable voting third party even in swing states. And the reason is this, and it goes back to that early bad faith viral Noam Chomsky interview, in which I asked him about a month before the 2020 race. Look, I said, I take your point. Let's say Trump is an existential threat.
That early bad faith pod interview, by the way, was absolutely insane. I don't know if you guys remember, but I covered part of it on the stream. Absolutely psychotic, where Noam Chomsky, on the brink of death, thank you very much, was just, what interview? You'd have to go and find it. It was like 2, maybe even 3, 4 years ago? It was infinity years ago. Thank you so much. Everyone thank Kanye. On the brink of death, Noam Chomsky was just like, please vote for Biden over Trump. Please, God. And they just could not get it. They could not understand the logic.
Let's say that he's a unique threat among all Republican candidates. My concern is that every year, because we all vote for blue no matter who, because most Democrats vote blue no matter who, or most left-leaning people do, the message that gets sent out is that Democrats don't have a bar. You can go as low as you want, as close to the Democratic Party as you, Republican Party as you want, and there's a ratchet to the right effect. And Republicans know that they can keep being more and more extreme. And so I want you to explain to me what you predict to be the stopping point at which we're no longer saying this new Republican is the worst that has ever happened.
Never. There is no stopping point. That is the answer. People always ask this. This is always the way it's framed, and it's such a bad faith way of framing it. How bad do Democrats have to be in order to not be the one to vote for? If they're better than the Republicans, you just always vote for them. It really is that simple. If you think that you're aiding and abetting in that case, like you're facilitating them always getting worse, whatever, trust me, them losing will not make them better. Like, think about it, okay? The Democrats had LBJ and Carter, and then they lost to Reagan and Bush Sr., and then who did they tout out? Clinton. The idea that electoral loss will encourage the Democrats to be less terrible is just not true. That is just not true. And that's not, like, it's totally ahistorical.
Republican is the worst that has ever happened. Tell me you're not going to be saying the same thing about Ron DeSantis or Vivek Ramaswamy or whatever other person comes down the pike. And he was unable, in my subjective view, to respond credibly to that claim. So if somebody could tell me strategically what the stopping point is going to be of making this argument of the lesser of two evils,
Never.
I would be open to the idea that, okay, this is the last one. Donald Trump.
Also worth pointing out, by the way, that even if you don't buy my argument on the lesser of two evils stuff, you know, even if you don't like what I have to say there, it is absolutely the case. It is an undeniable fact that Joe Biden has been significantly better than like what we could reasonably expect from a Democratic candidate. Like, Joe Biden isn't like the worst guy that we like. It would be one thing if Joe Biden was a really terrible president and it's like an argument between Donald Trump and some, you know, like it's like really, really difficult to make a case for Biden. But Biden's actually done a lot of good. Is he perfect? No, of course not. But that's not what we're talking about, is it? Because if we're trying to wait for perfect, then we're never giving anything. Yeah, it's not the United Kingdom, okay? We're not talking about like you know, the Labor Party here.
Fine. He tried to steal the election. Fine. That is a new line that he has crossed. But absent an acknowledgement that we are creating our own destiny by lowering the bar in these ways, I'm not comfortable coming out and criticizing anybody who no longer wants to be complicit in that kind of a system that's enabled the Democratic Party to not have a primary, treat Marianne Williamson as badly as they've treated her, treat Bernie Sanders as bad.
Again, the idea that low voter turnout is going to fix the Democratic Party is just not true. Losing doesn't fix it. Low voter turnout doesn't fix it. Neither of these things address the problem. They just don't. They factually don't. There is no empirical argument for the idea that they fix the problem.
Badly as they treated him, and openly come out and say they don't have to hold a free, fair election. The DNC argued that in court, you know?
So let me explain a little bit of my position. I think that'll help respond to some of what you said there. And I'm also curious to dig in a little bit more to your analysis of how the Biden administration has actually been in reality. So last election in 2020, I did live in a swing state. I lived in Virginia, still live in Virginia, registered in Virginia.
Imagine.
And it did not feel good to vote for Joe Biden, but I decided to vote for Joe Biden, which is something I said publicly at the time. But I said something very similar to you, which is like, listen, this was not easy for me. If you, wherever you live, swing state, not swing state, et cetera, you do whatever you analyze is the right thing to do. And the reason that I voted for him primarily at that time, even though I thought he had an atrocious record in the Senate, even though, you know, complicit in the Iraq War, complicit in bad trade deals, complicit, you know, like terrible things on crime, all that stuff, right? The primary reason I voted for him was because of the National Labor Relations Board. And because labor politics and building out union power in this country, to me, is one of the most important goals. And something that I think we all share and leftists generally believe. Now, in retrospect, not only do I feel good about that vote, he's actually surprised me. Now, I've got all kinds of issues, right? On the National Labor Relations Board, though, specifically, they just issued a ruling which could be a complete game changer for unions. And just to explain to people a little bit, basically in the past, bosses could union bust with impunity, no accountability. Now, the process going forward is completely changed. If bosses are caught union busting, then that's it. There's no more election. It's canceled. They have to recognize the union and start bargaining with them. That's the biggest shift in labor relations we've had in our lifetime. So that's why at this point, I'm not only, you know, it's likely to, I'm a Marianne supporter as well, but we can all see the most likely outcome is it's going to be Trump versus Biden. Not only would I say that protecting the Biden National Labor Relations Board is important enough for me to vote for Joe Biden, but it is important enough that I would actively encourage, but I'm not going to shame them for whatever they decide to do, but I would actively encourage people who are in a swing state to vote for Joe Biden, if for no other reason than to protect that board.
So I think that's a perfectly defensible position. And I had this conversation on my podcast in the last episode, and there were people who would characterize that position as, I mean, you've heard the thing, you've been on the internet, you know, being too credulous about Biden, or, you know, being too comfortable in one's own position in life.
Past a point, it stops being about leftist principle and it starts being about being literally incapable of recognizing when anything good happens. If you've been paying attention to the recent NLRB decisions, or like the Board of Labor Economics or whatever, or any of the stuff that's been going on with regards to unions, and as a leftist and you're like, yeah, whatever, just more status quo shit, then I genuinely question whether or not you care about any of those things. Like, I have to wonder now, do you actually give a shit about the working class and unions and the proletariat? Or was it all just like a LARP and you only wanted to distinguish yourself from liberals by pretending to be better on them? Because you know who's better on unions than Breonna Joy Gray? Joe Biden. Because Joe Biden's gotten shit done and she hasn't. She ran with Bernie's campaign, and honestly, thank God she's not in power. You know, if we're talking about actual material change and not just cosmopolitan champagne socialists prattling on about how you abstractly support the working class, but in reality, all these actual beneficial things that have happened are, you know, they're just whatever, then I don't think you actually give a shit about any of this. Blade time. Oh, I know that.
Life and not needing enough change and being happy with the status quo. People will say things like that. I think actually that if your priority, if you believe the path to meaningful change is going to primarily come through a kind of, I don't say this dismissively, but a kind of labor incrementalism, meaning there are meaningful labor gains that happen, but are not the type of which would radically transform the system the way that some people want to happen in a shorter term. And the way that some people might argue Bernie Sanders represented his movement as the goal of being.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, if Bernie Sanders had become the president, I genuinely don't know if he would have been able to push for a more radical set of NLRB rulings than what are happening right now. Genuinely. If he was president, like, these changes still would have had to come through the NLRB, and if he had done these things, like, the socialists of America would be in the streets firing their pistols in the air like Yosemite fucking Sam, okay? If Bernie was president and had done this, you would have heard, like, the screams of joy echoing across the country. But because Biden does it, it's like, oh, yeah, I guess that's good. And, you know, I don't know. I guess I'm just not that fucking cynical. I'm not. And I am willing to I guess, cap my lefty cred by acknowledging when, like, unprecedentedly pro-union shit happens.
Then that's a defensible position. But I have to hold space for the reality that there are people for whom, even as significant as those labor gains are, it's simply insufficient.
Oh,
and
my
what
God.
they see when they look at the trajectory of the last 50, 60 years of Democratic Party politics, when they read Listen Liberal and see the longer game the Democratic Party making a concerted choice to back away from labor in a way that has gone on for decades and isn't necessarily turning around as a consequence of Joe Biden having some good NLRB appointments.
So
let me actually,
and then I want to jump into it.
So
it's good, but it could be better is such a nothing statement. If that's all you have to say about a given policy, then you have nothing to say at all. You've contributed nothing whatsoever. It's nothing. Obviously, you could say that about literally anything. Literally anything. Everything Bernie would have done also would have been great, but not enough, because he can't, like, snap his fingers and single-handedly establish a proletarian state. You know, like, it's such a nothing. It could also be worse, you know? It could also be a lot worse.
Number one, I don't think that in, like, massively increasing union density, I actually don't see that as incremental change. I mean, if you look at the chart of the decline of the middle class and the decline of union density, you'd be hard-pressed to find a more significant factor.
I made these arguments as well.
But the other piece is, I feel like those same people who are right about the Democratic Party, they were right about the analysis in Listen Liberal, right about the fact that you had, this free trade, bipartisan consensus, and in large part a union-busting bipartisan consensus, also don't acknowledge that there actually has been a notable shift in the Biden administration. Now, my big issue with the Biden administration, I mean, there's a million of them, right? On foreign policy, I've got problems. But my biggest issue economically with the Biden administration is the way they've allowed the pandemic relief, the short-term pandemic relief programs to fall away and leave a lot of ordinary Americans in a more precarious financial position now than they were at the beginning of the administration. And that's not nothing. But when I look at the long term, when I look at the fact that, listen, with the Inflation Reduction Act, with the CHIPS Act, with infrastructure investment, you're talking about industrial policy in a way that would have been completely unheard of in the Clinton-Obama era. When you look at not just the NLRB, which I said is like the core for me, but also his antitrust appointments and the fact they're really trying to reverse decades of neoliberal attack on any sort of trust busting, I feel like none of those improvements.
Fuck, dude, I wish you would talk like this on Breaking Points, you know? This is pretty sensible. I wonder how much she feels she has to, like, moderate or bring down her messaging because she knows she's talking to a majority right-wing audience in Breaking Points. I'm not sure.
That have made Biden on that front way better than Obama, way better than Clinton. I just feel like there's no willingness to acknowledge any of that whatsoever.
I don't think the issue is acknowledging it. It's how much it matters to you, how weighty that is to you, and how much you see those kind of meaningful, call them meaningful improvements as really core to the nature of the project that you're on. And I think that what some people are frustrated by is that this went from feeling like, in both left media and left politics, a bigger revolutionary project that was going to the core of our capitalist system and wanting to radically change the way that human lives are valued, what we consider to be the nature of our social safety net, what we believe to be the nature of what we consider to be human rights.
Notice how she can't name anything specific because she's referring to a nebulous set of arbitrary goals that can never actually be met. This is like the definition of LARPing. Like, oh yeah, you've just listed like 50 things that are good, but I think we could have had this like fairy princess magical storybook version of a workers' revolution that I have in my head that has never actually happened in real life anywhere. And we could have just had that, but we didn't have that, so I'm not happy. You know, yeah. It's completely like idea. It's cosmopolitan. It's purely identity based. It's totally disconnected from a material analysis of the world. And on another note, we've been getting really good rolls with these Hema Piranhas, boys. We're going to have rage potions for days.
And they wanted to join a movement that validated what many of us felt intrinsically, emotionally for most of our lives, that something in the milk very much wasn't clean. And Bernie came along and articulated that it was legitimate for us to be asking for something more. And so at this point, it does feel as though there has been a kind of a bait and switch. It's not that what you're describing isn't true or legitimate. And I said this on my podcast. If your priorities are what you have kind of articulated your priorities as being, I think it's a perfectly legitimate argument. But I have to hold space for the fact that for many people, it simply is inadequate.
Wait, can I respond?
Yeah,
let me jump in here. So my issue is that many people on the left are, I would say, dishonestly refusing to acknowledge any good things that were done. We come on the left and it's like, here's the 57 things we hate that Biden did. But when something good happens, I'm the only one talking about it, and then I get accused of being a DNC shill. Now, I'm not like, look, I'm not blind. I think in order to be intellectually honest, you have to look at, here's the good things that happen, here's the bad thing that happened, I'm going to give them all to you, and then you could judge how much you value each and which one you weigh more and how that factors into your like voting analysis. But I was like the poster boy back in the day, or people viewed me this way, as like, he's the purity tester. He's like the main purity tester guy. And I didn't vote for Biden in 2020 because I didn't think he would pass my purity test.
Betrayal.
Now, at the time, people could go back and watch the video. My purity test was super fucking lenient. It was like, if I'm convinced you're going to do like 2 or 3 of the things that I value highly, then I would vote for you. Because I know it's basically down to just the Democrat and the Republican, no matter how much we want to wish the Green Party or Libertarians want to wish the Libertarian Party into existence. And so when I look at the record, again, I could list all the bad things, but you just mentioned the NLRB raising overtime pay, or you mentioned the thing where, you know, they automatically recognize the union if the bosses try to bust it up. There's also the overtime pay rule where now it's not $33,000, it's about $55,000 a year, where now you get overtime pay. That's a huge, huge change. Student loan debt reduction, and even Biden coming back after the Supreme Court tried to slap it down, and he said, no, I'm going to try to do it through the Higher Education Act now. There's little things we could go out.
Another, by the way, one thing I'm going to like shill for him. One thing that I will really recommend you guys watch Kyle's content for is that he has policy brain and I don't. He is to policy what SDL is to data. There are things that I do really well, and I will stand by, like, you know, some things with regards to like rhetoric or certain types of approach. But when it comes to like remembering, like literally just, it sounds simple, but it's not. Remembering what has happened, the policies that have been done, what effects they've had, and knowing when to bring it up, that is a skill that I'm just not amazing with, you know? That's why usually when I talk about stuff that Biden's done that I agree with, I have to keep the list down to like 3 or 4 things. I know of more, but I'm just not good at summoning that information when it's necessary. He is really good at doing that, and I strongly suggest you guys take a look at his content to get that, you know, that value as well.
After, oh, the interest rate. Yes, that's bad. I agree with you on that. But we got to recognize that that is, all things considered, a step in the right direction. Pulling out of Afghanistan, he actually had the balls to do it, even when the media was shitting on him relentlessly. And I didn't see anybody on the left coming into his defense at that point in time.
A lot of people have.
I was like the only fucking one. It was like me and Matt Iglesias.
I definitely defended him.
Okay, well then it's like 3 people. I didn't, and all these. Oh, I'm so anti-war. He pulls out of Afghanistan, and it gets messy because that's what happens when you pull out of wars. And all of a sudden, oh my god, you know, it's the end of the world.
That's true, dude. Everyone, all of the like, Biden is just another like imperialist, whatever, and then he pulls out of Afghanistan, and it's like crickets. This is why no previous president wanted to pull out of Afghanistan, by the way, because everyone with any sense knew that it was going to be a mess, because there's no way to pull out of a conflict like that without there being some kind of PR disaster. But he was willing to do it, And as a consequence of that, like, there were PR hits. Like, there was it was not pretty, but he did it. And what did he get for it? Nothing. No, seriously, he lost a ton of, literally. Look, hold on, wait, I'll show you right now. Okay, Biden removal, Afghanistan date. I don't remember the exact date. When was the timeline? When did we actually? When did we leave Afghanistan? 30th of August, 2021. Okay. Biden approval rating RCP. You can literally see him doing the thing that every American said they wanted. Right here. That was when his approval rating shifted. Look, it happened on the 30th of August, 2021. And right here, the 30th of August, 2021, that was the point. What led up to it and the day we left. Right here was when the cataclysmic shift in his popularity happened. He did the thing every American, not every American, but a lot of Americans wanted an end to the forever war. And he did it. And you know, it could have gone a lot worse. And what did he get politically from it? Nothing.
Good moment for the left. I saw a lot of consensus. Good on you, because we almost resented and kind of were enjoying the extent to which he was getting, dogpiled by the mainstream media, and we were the only ones defending him. So I would quibble with that a little bit.
But I didn't see much defending him.
He also drastically reduced the drone war. Yes, the number of drone strikes under each president. The number of drone strikes that we've seen under Obama and then Trump, like compared to them, Biden has done so little. Let me see if I can get the chart. Biden has all but halted the drone war. Here we go. Declared an alleged U.S. action in Yemen, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and then 2021 right here with like 2 alleged strikes. Then Iraq and Syria, declared strikes by U.S. President Iraq and Syria. Barack Obama's second term, Donald Trump, Joe Biden. This bar right here. Strikes in Somalia. Bush second term, Obama first term, Obama second term, Donald Trump, Biden. Like, and nobody talks about this. Like, all of the, like, American empire, U.S. hegemony, all of the people whose opposition to Biden seems to be part of this, like, broader project of opposing U.S. foreign intervention are completely silent on the fact that Biden has been really good on this in a way that nobody expected. Sorry, it's a long video. I gotta let it play.
I really didn't.
Kyle, what people are responding to, if I can offer this, is not the idea that you are accurately describing advancements, good things that Joe Biden is doing. I think you could also say Obama did some good things.
No, Biden is way better than Obama, not even close.
That's not the point I'm making. Okay. It's not that one is better than the other. You could also sit here and say Obama did good things. Now, the way you bristled at me saying that, I could say, oh, why won't you just acknowledge that Obama did good things? The same way that you're saying that leftists won't acknowledge, they bristle when you acknowledge that Biden did good things. What? And it's because we have different standards and we're making different kinds of comparisons.
But that's not my issue, because they're not even acknowledging the good things is my point. I have a list of 47 things here, and I've heard nobody talk about any of them.
But let me get to the core of this point. The reason that people are frustrated with that kind of analysis is because it's been used for so long by liberals to justify why people shouldn't be asking for more. I'm not saying that that's what you're doing. But if you bring up something like student debt, when the consensus of all the student debt experts that I've talked to on my podcast, people...
Empirical evidence that Biden has not only done good, but done way better than expected, and he gets, like, no credit for it, basically. And then it's like, well, actually, I'm just a super special kind of ultra-principled leftist. I with the magical ability to have higher standards. And by higher standards, I mean I don't even acknowledge when good things happen, you know?
From the Debt Collective, the Asher Taylors of the world, the legal experts I brought on, is that there was a path toward doing this, to canceling all student debt, that would not have been stymied by the Supreme Court. The same authority that Donald Trump used to enact the student debt moratorium, which has been ongoing until beginning of this month for the last 3 years, was the same authority that he could have canceled all student debt with a stroke of a pen. He chose not to do that because he decided to means test the program. He circulated those documents. I got one in my inbox last August, I believe it was, to see if you qualify for student debt. It was a very easy form.
I don't know that much about the technicalities of what he could have done with regards to canceling student debt, but I would be extremely skeptical of anything Brianna Joy Gray says when it comes to this. People like her, I was about to say lefties like her, but that wouldn't be accurate. People like her love to overstate the power that Biden has and understate the power that people like Trump have. So like Biden is at fault for not doing all of these incredible, magical, like unilateral things from the executive branch. But then when it comes to the threat of Trump, it's like, oh well, Trump can't be that much worse, you know. Trump doesn't pose that much of a threat.
But when he did that, that started the clock for people to be able to challenge it in court, which what 6 states did, 2 of them were successful, and now here we are today. Not only did he decline to do the unstoppable mechanism to actually cancel all student debt, he additionally chose to use a legal authority, which when many legal experts said was the most vulnerable one. So you're now saying,
no,
he could have used the Higher Education Act.
He did. He did.
He could have done that in the first instance.
But he didn't, and now he tried it again through the Higher Education Act. The idea that it's a conspiracy, he doesn't want to actually cancel it. No, he appealed the case like 4 or 5 times.
Kyle,
and then at the end of it, when the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that, he said, fuck you, I can. And he did the Higher Education Act. That's exactly what we wanted him to do. Then he does it, and people go, oh, that's not good enough. And it's like, that's ridiculous.
There, Kyle. What we wanted him to do was first and foremost, just cancel the student debt.
I expected him to do nothing on student debt. This is the point I'm trying to get across to you, is that I expected nothing from Biden.
How hard is Kyle winning? So far, like, Brianna Joy Gray hasn't said a single thing of substance. It's the same thing as always. It's, well, here's like 57 actual real things that have happened, and then in response you get this nebulous, well, I guess I, as a true pure leftist, have higher standards, you know? Real leftism is spending 3 years screeching about force the vote, you know? Real leftism is when there's one nebulous, incredibly granular, likely ineffective, LARPy element of political action that I've decided to make my entire career and will never stop talking about, and every good thing that happens from that point forward is to be ignored. You just know Brianna Joy Gray is the type of person, too, where if Trump, just purely through circumstance, did anything even remotely good, she would be dedicating a ton of time to how the right is outflanking the left. I bet you she's done that. I don't know that for sure. I'm kind of operating on vibes here, but I bet you she's the type. She has? Yeah, I bet so, yeah. Trump does one incidentally good thing, and it's like, dude, whoa, fascists actually more leftist than the Democratic Party? And then Biden, like, single-handedly creates a proletarian state via unionization, and she's like, I guess I have, like, higher standards. She literally said Marjorie Taylor Greene is outflanking the left. Oh, yeah, that's right. She did say that. I remember now. She did, yes, she extensively praised Marjorie Taylor Greene on Twitter and got a ton of shit for it and kept doubling down over and over. Yeah, I remember now. It's all coming back. It's flooding back into my mind. Because she was like, well, sure, when Marjorie Taylor Greene says we should abolish the FBI, she might be saying it because she just wants her fascist presidential preference candidate to get off scot-free for the crimes and insurrection he attempted. But, you know, maybe we can use this as a way of pivoting the fascists over to the left, you know? Oh, my God. Is there a reason you didn't bring any of this up when you talked with her that one time? I did. Didn't the FBI thing with Marjorie Taylor Greene come up with her? I'm pretty sure that was like a third of the conversation that I had with her. A lot of the problem that I had with the convo with her is that she basically just wanted to, like, ask me why I was mean to her. It was like 8 a.m. and I'm on a call with Brianna Joy Gray, and she's like, so here's a tweet where you call me, quote, a retarded bitch, end quote. Can you explain to me why you use that language? And I'm like, I'm sure you deserved it. I think that's actually a quote, like, from that conversation. She intentionally used your piss poor audio too. Yeah, in our conversation, for some reason, she released it and my audio sounded terrible, which is weird because not only did I record it locally via OBS, I also recorded it separately on an audio program and listened to both on my own, and in both of them I sound perfect, the same way that I do on stream. So her editors must have intentionally fucked the audio to make me sound worse. I don't know.
And he did way more than I expected.
Let's
be honest about that.
It's not about your expectations. We have different expectations.
Of course I'm going to talk about it through my expectations. I'm me.
But I want to pivot this conversation a little bit, because what we really have is a tactical disagreement. We could quibble about student loan debt. We could quibble about all kinds of aspects of the Biden administration. All of us would like him to do more. There's no doubt about that. But hold on a second. Our political aims are ultimately very similar. But I do think the student loan debt example is instructive, because it shows what has been effective in terms of securing real gains versus what has been ineffective. Jill Stein running in 2016, I don't think she was a spoiler, but the Democratic Party thinks she was a spoiler. They put that out to the public. So in the theory of change where a third party would force all of this revolutionary change on the Democratic Party, that should have worked. But instead, it served to allow the Democratic Party to basically demonize and dismiss third-party efforts, and then they prop up Joe Biden. So that definitely didn't work. However, the fact that Joe Biden had to be on a primary debate stage versus Bernie and Marianne and a whole lot of Elizabeth Warren, a whole lot of other people who were pushing him on student loan debt cancellation, forced him into a position of doing something when he 100% would have done nothing otherwise. And we can see that now because, you know, the fact that they've basically like blocked any sort of real democratic process within the Democratic primary has made it possible for him to literally promise nothing for this next term thus far. So you can see how the third party effort was not successful in bringing about whatever revolutionary change people want to see. And the process that Bernie engaged in and that Marianne Williamson is engaged.
Yeah, I agree completely. From a purely empirical standpoint, the only tactic we have seen which has effectively shifted the DNC to the left was Bernie Sanders going up there and being a king. You know, that was the one thing that we know for a fact has worked, because he went up there and he made, you know, he made his position, he made his case sound really, 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 really good. And that was the most we could have hoped for, and it worked. It did push the platform left. To be fair, it wasn't just Bernie in 2020. No, but that's because in 2016, everyone saw they had to race to keep up with him, you know? He did so much good work in 2016. It's unbelievable, and people don't give him enough credit for it. That's the only strategy we've seen that worked, you know?
Engaging and now was far more effective in actually delivering results. And that's what I'm focused on.
So first of all, you, I think, are both fundamentally dramatically overestimating and overstating and giving way too much credit in the second that you can make your labor point, the student debt point. Absolutely not. Joe Biden promised and coerced people to the polls by saying he was.
So notice again how she is going to ignore all of the stuff that was said, fixate on what she thinks is the weakest point, and then drive down on how, because Biden did all those good things, but he did this bad thing too, he didn't do good enough on this thing, so now that's like the specific thing we're going to focus on. These tactics are so predictable. It's so rote. It's like every time, you know? It's really dumb. It's really bad. You know, I don't know. I've heard it so many times, and I always know when it's coming to. Like, I can, like, feel it, you know? Fucking spidey sense for this shit. Yeah, whatever.
Going to cancel at least $10,000 of everybody's student loan debt, and moreover cancel all student loan debt for graduates of HBCUs. And he went down to Georgia, a state that he not only needed to win for the presidency, but needed to win for the Senate, and where there are 3 of the major HBCUs in the United States of America, made that promise, and people knocked doors and turned people out to the polls on the basis of that promise, which he immediately stopped talking about the second he got elected and reneged upon. He also knew the authority that he had to cancel all student debt. And I know because all of these student debt advocates have been talking about how they were directly liaising with his office and communicating these points, and they chose to ignore them and do a plan that he knew could be obstructed. You can say it's not a conspiracy theory, that's conspiratorial thinking, but it's either a conspiracy or he's an idiot. Those are the options. And I'm not especially comfortable in validating either of those things. Now, you were saying that you were looking through the prism of your own perspective.
No, I was saying I expected nothing from him, like we all expected nothing from him.
Absolutely not. The people that he promised.
I expected nothing from him. I expected nothing of Joe Biden. He was the guy who brought us NAFTA. He's the guy who brought us the Iraq War. He's the guy who wrote the Patriot Act, who wrote the crime bill. I expected nothing of him.
When a presidential candidate makes a promise to people and lies to them in order to get them to go to the polls, I believe it's my job as a member of independent media to make it clear so that people don't fall for those kinds of mistakes going forward. People, if Biden wants to run as I'm a milquetoast incrementalist who's just better than Trump, he can feel free to do that all day and night, and then he would have lived up to the expectations that he set for himself in the context of a primary campaign.
He did run as a milquetoast.
He promised to cancel all student debt for every graduate of an HBCU and $10,000 to $20,000 of student debt for people who earn less than $125,000 a year. Now, that might not matter to you, and I defend you guys.
Notice how slimy her rhetoric is too. That may not matter to you, Like, oh yeah, dude, Kyle Kalinske, definitely a person who's totally nonchalant and uncaring when it comes to expectations for economic populism from presidential candidates on the left. That's it. It's true. Historically, Kyle Kalinske has always taken a very moderate and laid back perspective on things like that, you know? It's totally dishonest. She's, again, the goal from her end is to frame herself as like the real leftist. Like, oh, maybe you're satisfied with him doing all of these incredibly good things nobody expected, but, you know, he didn't do this one thing. Also, Biden 100% ran as a moderate on the 2020 debate stage. Like all political candidates, he promised things that he hasn't delivered on. That's not unique to him. But relative to, say, like Warren and Bernie, he was definitely positioning himself as like the reasonable moderate, you know? If anything, he shifted left during his presidency. He didn't fucking warn anyone that he was going to single-handedly reinvigorate unions. Well, actually, no. He did claim that he would be a very pro-union president, but I didn't believe him. I should have believed him.
Against claims that, you know, you don't care about this stuff because, you know, you're out of touch and it doesn't affect you in material. I think that some of those claims get really silly and overly personalized. But Biden made a choice to tell 44 million Americans who have student debt that he was not only going to not fulfill his promise to them, but that in the middle of the debt ceiling argument of a couple of months ago, the one thing that he was going to bargain away to get the debt ceiling passed was ending the student loan moratorium. So now it's not me. I'm not the one in control of whoever votes. He has to make the case to those 44 million Americans who he's starting their student debt up. That's right. Months
is the plan stronger or weaker than what you expected? Because it's way stronger than what I expected.
Way weaker than what I expected.
Well, I expected nothing from him on student debt. Nothing.
The real question, though, is we all want all of the debt to be canceled.
Duh. Yeah, of course.
What is the most likely path to get us there?
It's not Joe Biden, obviously.
Hold on. But I don't
What
see
is it, Trump?
how Cornel West getting 5% of the vote and unintentionally helping to reelect Trump. That doesn't get us there at all.
Let's get into that. Let's get into that.
Oh
whereas if you have a primary contender actually able face-to-face to pressure him, we have seen the way that can potentially work.
Those things aren't mutually exclusive. So why is that an argument against Cornel West?
It doesn't have to be exclusive, but do you think that the project of defeating Trump is worthwhile at all? Because I would turn back on you. You ask the question like,
dude, she's really cutting to the heart of it. I'm really glad. Yeah, no, I'm really fucking glad. Because, like, if you're saying this shit over and over again, where it's like, you know, is Biden even the one to do this? Okay, well, do you want Trump to win or not? Like, actual question, you know? Real question that I am asking you. She's gonna say no. She's not gonna answer is what she's gonna do. She's going to ignore that question. I guarantee you.
Where's the bottom of the lesser evil question? Like, where does that end? I would turn it back on you and say, where does it become not just a lesser evil, but like, actually, this person is significantly better. And I would say that Biden, for my disappointments with him, for all of the things that I talk about including disappointments on student loan debt, including on the pandemic relief that I talked about, including on the railways, all these things, right? Ukraine. At what point, though, do you acknowledge that this person is a lot better than Donald Trump? And so when you're in this binary choice where let's not pretend like Cornel West is going to be president of the United States, it is worth making the choice in that situation to reelect Joe Biden and get the NLRB and get the antitrust stuff and get what is at hand to be gotten in this moment and live to fight another day.
So for one, Crystal, somebody might say, and people did make this exact argument against Bernie Sanders. Fine, he's on the stage, but I'm not going to vote for him. I'm not going to weaken the person who's ultimately obviously going to be the president of the United States. Why not vote for Biden in the primaries? You're wrinkling your brow because it's a ridiculous argument. I completely agree. I don't see the argument for Marianne and against Cornel West have nothing to do with each other. You can
jibber jabber. Everyone, jibber jabber alarm going off right there.
You can vote for Marianne in a primary. You can be happy that she's on the debate stage, which obviously they aren't allowing, which is material to this argument, I've got to say.
Bob Flowski, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Some people you're saying, what is the Green Party going to do? The Democratic Party has demonstrated that it won't host a free and fair and open primary.
I get that. But how does Cornel West getting 5% of the vote and helping unintentionally to reelect Trump, how does that move us towards our goals?
So two things. One, you said this in the now viral clip, that just framing Cornel West as the spoiler, looking at those polls. In those polls that you referenced, Biden is losing in both of them, with or without Cornel West in the race. Now,
Cornel West makes it worse.
Cornel West is incrementally worse.
I just want to clarify one thing. I'm not blaming people or saying like it's their fault for Trump getting reelected or whatever. But I am saying we would like it if the way the Democratic Party responded to Cornel West would be to cancel all the student loan. But we know that's not reality. So we know that what ought to happen and the reality of what will.
Was a clip Destiny brought up? Destiny clowns. Wait, did he watch like a year-old debate? And that got put. Is this the key to getting on livestream fail? Actual plantation accent, OMG. True, it's called the tactical plantation accent when you're talking to a woman of color. It just slips in. It's the white DNA. It naturally slips in. All the lefties that have been warning about me, they were correct this entire time. I literally can't help it. Vaush, you sounded like a gay plantation owner for a second. Yeah, I was sleepy as shit. Play the clip. Yes?
I think my favorite Vaush clip of all time.
This is a kick clip.
Is when Vaush debates black people, he gets possessed by his Gusano slave-owning ancestors.
I already did this joke. He's stealing this from me.
Actually politically represent my interests.
I'm not. My point here ain't about criticizing your vote. It's that only two.
Dude, holy shit, it's true.
People were going to be president, and there were
Right,
only
but-
two real paths to FBI.
No. But those are two different. But
It's true. What happened? I hadn't showered yet. Like I woke up and I did the debate right away. I hadn't showered yet. Does the shower like I'm showering off my like rooted Aryan Confederate like what is that? Holy shit. I must have been very sleepy. You almost sounded like me and I have a Texan accent. Holy shit, dude. I can't believe it. Good wow, man. Good thing I didn't talk like this. Good thing I had a shower before having a conversation with Professor Flowers. Otherwise the clips would have been fucking 5 times as bad. Oh my god. Yeah, I was admittedly beset by tiredness. Oh shit! Is that why I said that too? Does it make more sense if I say it like a southern plantation owner? I am admittedly beset by tiredness. Oh shit! That's it! Whenever I'm sleepy, I turn into a Confederate. Okay, there we go. It's all fitting. It's all fitting! This is why it's so important that I get that sleep study, okay? I have to make sure that I'm properly rested. Motherfucking foghorn, leghorn. Yeah. Holy shit, that's funny.
Happen are two very different things.
let's get to the second point.
Yeah.
You framed the 2016 votes for Jill Stein and the reaction of the Democratic Party subsequently as evidence that a concerted movement effort to withhold one's votes has been proven ineffective. It is obviously the case, Crystal, that there was not a concerted effort in 2016 or any kind of structural movement to withhold one's vote for Hillary Clinton in favor of Jill Stein. It was just a bunch of us angry Bernie bros. A very small number, by the way.
This is a complete distraction. There were tons of people on the left who were saying that they weren't going to vote for Biden because the Bernie bro thing, the whole Bernie or bust. That's what the term Bernie or bust is. Whether or not there was a substantial number of them is immaterial to the question of whether or not they were right or wrong. Even if none of them actually committed to doing that, and of course some did, you know, not a significant amount, I think, in the overall, in the overall electorate, but still. Then you can criticize the actions. Like, that's it. It's that simple.
The way, because we all know sitting here that more Bernie Sanders voters in 2016 bent the knee and voted for Hillary Clinton than Hillary Clinton voters in 2008 bent the knee and voted for Barack.
Also, yeah, it's such bullshit for her to say like, oh, dude, there was no like real effort to withhold the vote when she was one of the loudest people advocating for holding the vote. Like, yeah, she and her fucking pedo former what's British man? The British man. Virgil Texas. Yeah, the British man who's called Texas or something. Is he even British? I remember him being British. Yeah, that. Like, they were very loud. Like, they literally, that was their debate with Chomsky. He's not British. He looks British. That was their fucking debate with Chomsky. The whole debate with Chomsky was over, it was over like the Bernie or bust thing. And now she's like, oh, well, that wasn't like really a thing. Well, yeah, no thanks to you.
Obama. We all know these statistics. We've been saying them back at neoliberals for the last 5, 6, whatever years. That being said, there was no argument to control the media narrative and present an opportunity for actual leverage and change. So there wasn't like a group, there was no spokesperson, there was no politician, there was no left media that was saying, here, I have a organized movement, an organized group.
But there were a bunch of fucking podcasters saying it, weren't there?
People who are willing to actually change their mind and vote for the Democratic nominee in exchange for various concessions. That didn't exist. And I'm, by the way, not advocating for it. I know that some of my friends like Nathan Robinson have said that Cornel West should do exactly that, say that he'd be willing to drop out in exchange for various concessions. I think that's better than nothing. I think that's more than, frankly, I love Marianne and I hope she's successful, but that's more than Marianne is likely to get out of this. However, that is not even my plan, my perspective.
Yeah.
What I am saying, though, is that knowing that the Democratic Party is fundamentally not willing to be fair. They're willing to rig the election. They're willing to change the order of the states. They are willing to completely block Marianne out of the media. It feels rich to say that running within the Democratic Party is manifestly and demonstrably more effective in actually changing the outcomes
because of the
public
structural
policy
barriers free
than Cornel West, who at very least
It literally is. No, you can't argue that. You can't say, oh, because they were unfair these times, that it's dumb to say that they're better on this. It's empirically the case that it is. The fact that it's unfair does not detract from the fact that it is a better method of making change within the DNC than running third party, which has never done anything good. It just doesn't. What does she mean, rig the election? I don't want to get into all the granular shit, but like during 2016, mostly 2016, less so 2020, there was some like DNC stuff that was very clearly skewed towards like Hillary over Bernie. The DNC does not need to provide a fair and unbiased election for the people who run in it, because the DNC and its primaries are a private organization. Like electing within a primary it's a private, like that's the DNC's thing. It's not like a government function. And as a product of that, they have done unfair things within that purview. I think that a lot of lefties overstate how unfair it has been, but it has still undeniably been unfair. So, you know, it gets brought up a lot.
You're being very dismissive, Kyle, about this 5% matching
first of all,
funds.
I've said like 2 words in the past 10 minutes, okay? So I'm not being dismissive about anything. I haven't got
Kyle talk.
Okay, what is it that you're chomping at the bit
It's
to
the
say,
structural barriers against running as a third party. As rigged as it is by the DNC against outsider Democrats, which it definitely is, it's even more rigged against third parties, which is why they always get like 3% of the vote.
Which is literally
and
why.
Bernie got 43% of the vote.
Which is literally why people feel it is a structural advantage to get someone like Cornel West to 5% of the vote so they can get federal matching funds. To me, as
He'd
a
get
voter,
40% as a Democrat.
For me, as a voter in New York, I'm not interested in.
Also, when they talk about reaching 5% to get federal matching funds, even if by some miracle they manage to do that, it's worth remembering that that wouldn't do shit. The federal matching funds that would be provided towards, like, with all that money, they could go from 5% to 6%. Like, it would not do anything, you know? They talk about that like that's them winning the presidency, and it's not. They would like, for a brief bit, it'd be like, oh, wow, okay, here's like a couple, like, few tens of millions or whatever, which is not even remotely enough. Jill Stein got like 1.6% of the vote. Yeah, hold on. Green Party vote percent 2020. In the general. Okay, just so you guys understand how irrelevant third parties are, all right? Howie Hawkins was the Green Party presidential candidate in 2020, and he won the primary within the Green Party with 5,182 votes. Just so you understand, like, the presidential candidate for the Green Party was decided by a number of people equivalent to, like, a large high school attendance. You know? That is the level we're on. In the general, the Green Party ticket, what do we get? They didn't even have full ballot access. Jesus Christ. There we go. Howie Hawkins. Okay, this is how bad it was. All right? Howie Hawkins, 400,000 or so votes, about a quarter of what the Libertarian Party got. 0.26% of the vote. So getting 5% of the general vote would be 20 times what they got in 2020. Jesus Christ. And we're, like, seriously talking about this.
Shoring up the Democratic Party.
No, that's him getting his ideas out. It's shoring up Cornel West. That's the whole point.
I am not a Democrat.
I understand that. That's very clear. But I'm saying that would shore up Cornel West.
And the people who also don't want to vote for Joe Biden under any circumstances are not Democrats. And fundamentally, you can make your argument. I think it's a perfectly legitimate argument to make to Democrats. I think that Democrats might think that Joe Biden is a manifestly better Democrat than other Democrats.
But it's not about whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. It's about what are your political goals. And I think that we
100%.
share a lot of the same political
goals. There's a big one that we don't share.
But hold on. So I still don't understand. Just lay out for me.
Yeah.
What in the ideal scenario happens, and how does that constitute any sort of revolutionary change or help to further the goals that we largely share?
Yeah. I think, for one, getting federal matching funds for third-party candidates, since I believe third parties are going to be a much better vehicle to actual meaningful change in this country than the Democratic Party, is infinitely more significant a goal.
But
than
third parties haven't gotten a single electoral vote in 50
like
years.
round and round and round and round.
No, but it's true, because, I mean, look at Ross Perot had all the money in the world. It didn't matter.
He didn't get one electoral vote.
He didn't get one electoral
Do you agree that
vote.
ranked choice voting needs to come first? That's the important question. Do you agree that if we get ranked choice voting, then yes, overnight third party?
I want it to be known how cathartic it is for me, somebody who's been like running on these lines for a while, to listen to it be advocated for by Crystal and Kyle. It's so fucking gratifying from my end of things to hear the advocacy like this. It's so good. It feels so good.
Parties become more viable, but until we get them, they're not viable.
I think that Cornel West running in a general election where he has been doing this. He's been talking about ranked choice voting in interviews, but continuing to talk about how the onus is on the Democratic Party to prevent the spoiler effect. He is in a position now, running in a general election, every time he goes on TV, to say, if you're upset at me at being a spoiler, you need to look at the Democratic Party, who across the country for the last decades has been purposefully undermining any ballot measures that effectively put into effect ranked choice voting in Maine, in North Carolina, the way they attacked Matthew Hoh. I am not the enemy, they are. And that's the burden shifting, the narrative burden shifting. I think the left should be.
I hate this third party brain rot. Okay, yeah, I can't know this for sure, but I think a lot of people get suckered into this, and a lot of those people have good intentions. But I really do think that a lot of the hoorah, Cornel West, whatever types, I really do think they're knowing grifters. I think that a lot of them understand that third parties can't actually do anything, and the reason they advocate for them is because this way they never have to be accountable for anything. Because Cornel West will never win and never do anything, and they know it, they can hold him up as the permanent, like, unreachable end state of like a god you can worship. Oh, well, you're never going to get that point. So as long as we never reach a point where we have to be held to account for our inability to govern, then it's fine, you know? We're never actually held accountable. And it just goes on and on and on. What would they do if by some miracle he actually won? Honestly, be one of the biggest embarrassments in American political history. Like, incredibly, like, unimaginably ineffectual governance. Like, we're talking like everything Jimmy Carter fucked up on times 5,000, you know? But it's not going to happen. It'll never happen. It can't happen, and they know it. Because advocating for things that actually can happen means that if they do happen, you're accountable for it. It means that you have responsibility over the way the messaging is delivered and the outcomes. But as long as you're on pie in the sky bullshit, then you don't have to do any of that. Yeah, dog that caught the car. Yeah. This is how bad the Green Party did. Oh, dude, really? Kanye West outperformed them in the... Oh, my God. Okay. Started from the bottom, now we're here.
Engaged in right now. To the extent that you think that Cornel West can ruin Biden's chances, isn't it Biden's responsibility to find those votes, not among disaffected third partiers who don't owe him anything anyway, but the tens of thousands and millions of disaffected Democrats who aren't going to...
That's Drake, you dumbass. I feel like this is consistent with my knowledge of music. This is a character trait you all are just going to have to learn to live with, okay? Like I would fucking know, all right? I listened to my beautiful, twisted, dark, sick, nasty, gross, disgusting, kinky fantasy while I was doing the music arc, and I thought some of those songs sounded pretty good. But, like, knowing what is a Drake song, like, this is far beyond my knowledge, and you guys know that.
to vote for him. We've all talked about this together. In Wisconsin, in 2016, there were 88,000 registered Black voters who voted in 2012 who declined to vote in 2016. That's like 2 or 3 times the margin by which Hillary Clinton lost in that state alone. And yet we're sitting here talking about whether or not Cornel West is going to pull some third-party voters away from the Democratic Party.
It's the difference between what I would love to happen and the reality that we have experienced now. I mean, we tried it before in 2016. It did not help.
What did we try in 2016?
The third-party effort. Jill Stein was not a spoiler. It is not those voters' fault who voted for, like you guys that voted for Jill Stein.
But she got blamed anyway.
But she got blamed.
And then the
Yes,
left was
I
further
blame you.
marginalized as a result of it.
So I don't see the connection. If I did, I would love to vote for Cornel West. It would feel way better to vote for Cornel West. I share his politics almost 100%. But I don't see the connection between voting for Cornel West and achieving any of the aims. And I see a much more direct connection between protecting the Biden National Labor Relations Board and allowing this little budding, exciting, amazing, potentially transformational labor movement to actually grow. Whereas if Trump gets reelected, which is, listen, it's the fact, based on how the Democratic Party is going to respond to Cornel West's election bid, it is more likely that Donald Trump gets elected with Cornel West in the race. And that, to me, is a massive loss because we know what his record is. We know what his National Labor Relations Board was. We know.
Unrelated, but why does she sound like the TikTok voice? You know, you're not wrong. Crystal does have a voice that sounds a little bit like the TikTok lady voice. That's true.
Who his labor secretaries were and how they were engaged in all this union busting. And so I see a much more direct connection between that moving the ball in our direction than, you know, Cornel West getting 5% and either his candidacy not really mattering at all or being used once again to, you know, smear the left and marginalize the left and say these are just the people that are interested in getting Trump elected.
So to that second point, I'm just going to be honest. Not only do I not care about arguments that the left is going to be smeared, I think it's silly because no matter what we do, the left is going to get smeared. Bernie won Nevada, and it was, oh my God, we're going to decapitate people in Central Park. You know, it is.
I think this is total fucking cope. The idea. So listen, the left gets blamed for a lot of dumb bullshit. But the idea that it's always the same no matter what, and the left will always get the same amount of blame no matter what, so there's no point in doing things that are optically effective because no matter what, it'll always be the same outcome. This is like the logic of like an angry kid or whatever. Like, everyone hates me anyway. It's stupid. That is not the case. Bernie Sanders did not get like uniform 100% unyielding hatred from every single media institute on the left. That is just not true. That's incorrect. When that dipshit was on MSNBC said that Bernie Sanders was going to have like people beheaded in Central Park or whatever, he got a lot of pushback on that and a lot of flack and was made fun of pretty heavily for doing that. I don't like the rewriting of history where we frame ourselves as like ultimate giga martyrs, where the media is so against us that Chris Matthews, he got fired over it, didn't he? Did he get fired over it? I think he left after that. Yeah, like it's. But notice how the way Brianna Joy Gray frames it, it's like, oh yeah, well that was all the media all the time. It's just bullshit, you know? You can acknowledge that Bernie Sanders was treated unfairly in a lot of ways without pretending that there's no point whatsoever in trying to appeal to people's interests.
It is, I think, deeply unrealistic to expect that there's ever going to be a left movement that genuinely challenges power in this country that's not going to be smeared. And if you are choosing your political strategy on the basis of what's going to get you a pat on the head from MSNBC, I know I don't mean to mischaracterize you, but that is naive.
Listen, that's fine, and I agree with you. Left is going to be smeared, but the question is, what is actually going to move the ball forward?
I'm confused by why you keep asking that.
Because I don't see...
Because policy is all that matters at the end of the day.
I don't see how Cornel West...
Brianna Joy Gray is like, I'm confused by why you keep asking me how to actually improve things rather than just complain. Why do you keep... I'm curious. I'm trying to LARP here, and you keep talking about policy and ways to make things better for the working class, and I don't understand why. Why are you doing that over and over?
Getting 5% and helping to reelect Trump ends up with things going in a better direction.
Like that, Crystal? He gets 5%, and then the Green Party, a third party effort, it gets stronger and more well-funded and more able to compete in future elections.
Until we have ranked choice voting, there is no even 1% viability for them. Can you admit that? Can you acknowledge that it's until we get ranked choice voting, no...
Guys, okay, we just need to lose to the Republicans for 40 consecutive elections, and then finally, a third party will have more power than the DNC, okay? Listen, We just need to have the spoiler effect split left-leaning votes between Dems and the Green Party for 50 more years. And then when we're done, assuming the right hasn't ended all elections forever, then we finally can have a viable third party, okay? Guys, trust me. I've got a really good plan here, okay? Just trust me.
Third party has any chance in hell. You agree with that, right?
Who do you think has been doing most of the ranked choice?
That?
Who do you think?
I'm not going to answer it. It's a simple question.
I'm going to answer it in my own time, in my own words, Kyle, respectfully.
It's a simple one. The ranked choice voting thing, if we get ranked choice voting...
I go around, I do a lot of podcasts, and I don't know what's going on right now. It might be the phase of the moon. We had the double moon last month. But I'm getting a little frustrated.
This is classic Brianna Joy Gray, where she acts like a retard for 30 minutes, doesn't address anything that's said to her, and then she's like, you're all being really hostile to me right now, and I don't know if I like that, personally, in my opinion. I don't know if I like that, and she gets really fucking smug. This is so on brand for her. It's completely, she does this every fucking time.
With feeling shouted down and disrespected in every single space that I go into. I gotta say, I promise I'm gonna answer your question, Kyle. Sit tight. I got it coming for you.
I'll sit tight.
Who do you think has been doing the bulk and the best funded ranked choice voting advocacy in terms of getting it on ballots and getting it passed in the United States of America?
Third-party voters.
The Libertarian Party.
Yeah.
Because unlike the Green Party, I'm no fan of the Libertarian Party, but for obvious reasons, they were enormously better funded than the Green Party. And they, as a consequence, have been able to make much greater gains in actually getting ranked choice voting passed around the country. What I'm saying is that
this is actually changing, I'm pretty sure, because right now the Mises Caucus is like controlling the Libertarian Party. There's been a larger shift towards using the Libertarian Party as a vehicle for pushing people further to the right and just voting Republican. Like the moneyed interests that control the Libertarian Party don't actually give a shit about the Libertarians winning. They just care about trying to take like third-party voters and shift them over to like full fascist shit, you know?
There's a tangible material benefit to getting more money for a Green Party, whatever third party happens to be, but right now all we have is the Green Party for obvious reasons. Getting them more money to do the work across the country to advance third parties, ranked choice voting rather, is exactly the goal that you're articulating. So yes, I do see a direct connection between your goal, your stated goal of getting ranked choice voting and voting for the Green Party. You know who's not going to fight for ranked choice voting? The Democratic Party.
Here's my point. There's not even a 1% chance or a 0.1% chance of Cornel West winning unless or until we get ranked choice voting. So I have to be honest, I feel like it's...
Also, notice how two of her biggest points are completely mutually exclusive and contradictory, but she can't actually acknowledge the criticism between them. On one hand, she says she does not think that people voting for Cornel West are going to be a spoiler for the Democrats, but she's also advocating for them to reach 5%. The Green Party reaching 5%, which won't happen, of course, but if it did happen, would 100% lock the Democrats out of a victory. Guaranteed, 100%. Unless somehow Cornel West manages to secure a voter base composed entirely of former Republicans, that would do it right there. So she's saying, oh, no, this won't actually harm our chance to get Trump or whatever, but also she's advocating for exactly that to happen.
It's self-disenfranchisement to really like put all your effort into third parties before we get ranked choice, putting the cart before the horse, in my opinion. That's my point. And on the issue of Democrats versus Republicans, we know either the Democrat or the Republican is going to win. And clearly we have a disagreement in terms of how good of a job Joe Biden is doing. Because like I said, I expected nothing of him, Brianna. I expected, this is the guy who brought us the Iraq War and the Patriot Act and NAFTA, and he's like the poster child of the conservative Democrat and the neoliberal. But then he gets in office and he does all these things which shock me. He massively reduced the drone war by over 90%. He, like I said, pulled out of Afghanistan. The Supreme Court overturned the EPA's ability to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. And the Democrats slipped into the IRA a provision that redefines carbon as a pollutant, which then allows the EPA to start protecting the environment again. If we didn't get that, and yes, that was brought to us by Democrats, we would be beyond fucked on the issue of climate change. We still are, but we'd be even more fucked if the EPA couldn't do basic EPA stuff. We have project labor agreements for hundreds of thousands of construction workers. That came to us from Biden. $15 minimum wage for federal contractors and employees. That's from Biden. Gun reform with red flag laws and closing the boyfriend loophole. Those are definitely good things. Ketanji Brown Jackson on the court.
Get ready for Brianna Joy Gray's reaction. Oh, dude. Okay, guys, we're putting the bets down now. Is she going to be the maddest any human has ever been, or is she going to ignore basically everything that was said and focus on one tiny niche point? Or is she going to ask a stupid rhetorical question like, well, then how do you expect us to get third parties? Ignore? We're voting on ignore? Okay.
A George Floyd executive order to create a registry of abusive cops. We have the PACT Act, which is healthcare for veterans exposed to toxic burn pits, which every single Republican voted against. He added 800,000 manufacturing jobs. I didn't expect any of these things. So when I talk about Biden the way I do, is because none of these things were on the menu and we got them. So now when I look at the fact it's either going to be Trump or Biden, a standard generic Republican or standard generic Democrat, the way I feel now versus the way I felt in the past is like, oh, this is definitely way better. If you asked me in 2019 or 2020, I'd be like, I don't know, man, flip a coin. 52% maybe a Democrat's a little bit better than a Republican. Now I'm looking at it like, it's not even close. One blows the other out of the water. And all I care about is the policy. And when we have all these policies, I mean, we have a 15% corporate minimum tax rate now. That is not something we had previously. You'd have corporations paying nothing in taxes, or they'd even get a negative tax rate, which is a subsidy effectively from the taxpayers. These things are not nothing. We have a 1% tax on stock buybacks. They're cracking down on wealthy tax cheats. Like, all these things are very good. They're objectively good. So do you agree that Biden is better than what we expected on the left?
Maybe you've already set your expectations on the ground, and it seems like he's surpassed your expectations.
Not answering.
He has not surpassed mine. I don't know what you want me to.
Not answering. Yeah. Okay, so what she's doing here very dishonestly is she is conflating expectations with hopes. Because if she genuinely expected Biden to do all those good things, then she would be like a fucking resist lib. But she's conflating those two things. She's ignoring it deliberately. It's deliberate dishonesty. It's not confusion. She knows that so ignoring was the answer. You were all correct.
But he's not better than what you thought?
No,
That's
he's not better than what I thought he would.
Really?
No.
Really?
Better than
psychotic.
For
Actually
sure.
psychotic.
I expected him to. Well, I didn't really expect him to fulfill his campaign promises, but I'm not going
to... See, liar! She's a fucking liar! She gets called out on the fact that she's conflating expectation with hope, and then she's like, oh, well, no, actually, he's worse than I expected. And then she's like, completely contradictory, well, I didn't expect him to do anything, actually. She doesn't believe in anything. She lies for her own personal benefit. Like, that's it, you know? Complete lie. And like, that right there should be enough to discredit anything. Just in the same sentence right there. It's just nothing. She doesn't believe shit. She doesn't believe anything.
Pat him on the back when he so flagrantly lied about them. No.
But let me ask you a related but different question. I mean, how do you assess the difference between a Trump and a Biden? Acknowledging that, I mean, I think you would acknowledge it's not, Cornel West is not going to be president.
I'm going to be honest with you. If it's about convincing me how Brianna Joy Gray is going to vote, Brianna Joy Gray lives in D.C., is constructively disenfranchised, and Brianna Joy Gray also is sympathetic to accelerationist arguments. So I am not afraid of Trump, and I am not going to, I will never. Again,
total grifter. Literally, she does not care if you die. If you're watching this right now and you're trans or you're any kind of queer, whatever, like she will walk over your mass grave. She does not give a shit. She makes her money. You know, she grew up in a you know, she went to Harvard. Okay, she's fine. If shit goes really bad here, then she can just leave, or fuck, you know, she can just join the opposition because she clearly has no fucking principles. You know, I'm not afraid of Trump. Yeah, of course not, because you're a fucking wealthy, well, not wealthy by like wealthy standards probably, but like compared to the majority of people who watch her content, you know, she does not give a shit.
Ever for the rest of my life, I don't care if I live in Pennsylvania, I don't care if I live in Georgia, vote out of fear. That's not who I am. That's not who I was raised. That's just me. And I recognize that I am radical. I recognize
I'm brave,
not telling
actually,
anybody to
for
be
not
like
caring
me,
about fascism.
but that's who I am.
So, but just to get back to the question, I mean, do you acknowledge that Biden is better than Trump? I genuinely want to know, like, how do you assess? Do you see they're like roughly the same?
I think it depends on what metric they're using. There are people who will take everything that you just said and say, if Biden escalating in Ukraine the way he has been doing, missiles going off deeper.
She can't even answer this. Not even this. Because again, she has, no real beliefs. The only thing that she believes is that a very specific kind of like borderline third positionist contrarianism gets her Patreon money, because she appeals to a very specific subset of hyper, like, doomer, completely politically ineffective losers who are too socially anxious to pick up the fucking phone when it rings, but somehow believe they're going to be like vanguards of a revolution. And to that end, anything that even remotely deviates from the LARPy fantasy they have of being revolutionary leaders, like that can't sell for her. That's not marketable for her. That's not a good product she can sell. So she'll say anything to pull away from that.
Closer to Russia, that are Western in origin, and the doomsday clock ticking down on World War III the way it has been done cancels out all of the meaningful gains that you just articulated so nicely. If it comes down to World War III versus that...
Sorry. You know, you may have laid out 50 trillion things that he's done good, but he also supports Ukraine in defending itself against Russia. So actually, it all doesn't matter. Every single good thing that he's done has been completely negated by that one specific thing that he has done. What Biden could have done to really distinguish himself as a candidate for Brianna Joy Gray would have been if he had sent arms to Russia. Actually, you see, by giving military equipment to Russia, the war ends faster in Russia's favor, which lowers the likelihood of escalation because there's just no point in resisting Russia. See, so actually, that would have been the anti-war move, and because he didn't do that, then it doesn't matter.
Of achievements that you just articulated, there were people that, with the hindsight of living in the nuclear holocaust, would say, well, I guess that Trump actually was a better president.
Who's more likely to get us to World War III, though? I definitely think it's Trump. I definitely think...
Yeah, Jesus Christ. Trump, which pulled out of the fucking Iran nuclear accords. Trump, which then set Iran on a path towards nuclearization, which is probably going to lead to direct military conflict with Israel because they're building nuclear bunkers fucking 5 trillion miles beneath the mountains. Trump, who fucking struck Soleimani in an Iraqi airport, which contributed not only to Iraq being pushed further over towards Iran, but also towards Iran hyper-cementing its oppositional attitudes. Trump, which talked non-stop about a fucking escalating antagonism with China. Yeah, oh yeah, dude, totally, 100%. Thank God, you know, maybe now we live under warmonger Biden, but thank God that under Trump we had 4 years of sensible and peaceful governance.
Gets Trump more likely to get us World War III.
I don't want to know what people think.
You disagree?
I want to know.
Oh
I want to know what you think.
God,
do you think
dude.
that's accurate? Because to me, I look at the
we
record.
don't know until history happens what history is going to do. I wouldn't have expected that under Biden we would have gotten in the middle of this war with Ukraine and Russia.
We're not in the middle of the war.
Yeah, but we know that Trump was actually more hawkish towards Russia than
he built up on NATO's border.
Obama
he put
was.
troops on NATO's border.
We know what he did with Iran. We know he said he was going to get on Afghanistan. Biden actually did it. So we can evaluate these two claims. We shouldn't believe anything that Donald Trump says about Ukraine.
A toxic. This is literally just a vote blue no matter who conversation.
Sorry. So now, because she literally cannot deal with the overwhelming tide of facts that have been thrown in her face, she has to use a branding label to try to mark Kyle and Crystal with the "I don't need to listen to you because you're just a DNC simp" like brand, you know? Sorry, all of your factual arguments for which I have literally no retort are just vote blue no matter who arguments. I guess reality is vote blue no matter who. Toxic gossip train. Brianna Joy Gray referring to vote blue no matter who. Yeah.
It's a let's discuss the facts and how you weigh them conversation.
How about this?
Based
Biden
answer.
can be 10 times better than Trump. Let's concede that for the sake of argument.
Okay.
I'm not voting for him. And millions of other people feel the same way because it has absolutely nothing to do with
I love it when you get right there. I mean, I know she thinks that way. I know that's what she thinks. Well, again, I don't want to imply these are like sincere beliefs that she has. I know she says that. That's the consequence of what she says. It's very funny for her to just come out and say it like openly, you know, that none of this has anything to do with like material outcomes, and all of it is. Can you believe that she was the press secretary for Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign? Dude, I don't fucking know, man. This is one of those like chaos theory butterfly effect situations where if Bernie won, like she would have pivoted America into some kind of like Strasserite third positionist hell. I don't know, man. Fucking the reason that Bernie Sanders didn't win in 2020 is actually because a time traveler from an alternate timeline in the year 2076 went back and tipped the scales against him because Brianna Joy Gray would have single-handedly ended the world. You know? She's lost the plot? No. She hasn't lost the plot. She is deliberately lying because this is how she makes her money. That's it. It's just grifting. Brianna Joy Gray is not stupid. She could not have done the things she has done if she was stupid. But she makes her money now online from a very specific audience. And that audience's number one goal is to not be a dirty old liberal like mean old mom and dad who won't let me live rent-free in their place anymore. And because that is her center position, everything she has to say stems forward from that. Also, can we just say, by the way, that Crystal and Kyle are fucking killing it? Can we like give you know, credit where credit is due and acknowledge that?
With that, I don't know how else to express this to you guys. Kyle, it's not that there is a disinterest or a failure to recognize what are meaningful changes, but there is a realization that acknowledging gains when the possibility of what someone could be doing to help the population that elected them, when there is a huge gap there, it can be papered up by championing someone's accomplishments. And people are reluctant to give credit precisely because they think it will end the conversation about how much further people should be pushed. So it feels akin to saying, Jeff Bezos was walking down the street and he gave a $5 to a homeless person.
It's not that, oh my God.
Aren't you?
It's exactly like that. Bernie Sanders being like the most pro-worker president in like a century with the unions and stuff. It's like when Jeff Bezos gives a homeless person a $5. It's true. Nothing means anything. Remember, again, this is the same Brianna Joy Gray who was bruising her throat, sucking Marjorie Taylor Greene. I meant Biden. Biden, yeah. She was bruising her throat, sucking Marjorie Taylor Greene's cock because Marjorie Taylor Greene said that the FBI needs to be abolished to protect Trump from the consequences of an insurrection attempt. So for some reason, Brianna Joy Gray very willing to give credit when the person she's giving credit to are fascists trying to cover up or avoid culpability after a coup attempt. But in other directions, you know,
don't you want to pat him on the back? And it's like, well, yeah, on some level, I'm glad the homeless guy can give his sandwich. But your framing of the student debt issue
is accurate. Yes.
Is precisely what the problem is.
It's not a problem. Look, I am actually discussing the facts that I learned through reading 1,000 articles on the case. Now, if I bring up those facts and it triggers some idiots into hating me, so be it. They can hate me all they want. The facts still matter.
What are you talking about?
Okay, I didn't expect him to appeal the cases. He appealed the cases. I didn't expect him to do the Higher Education Act after the Supreme Court slapped it down. He did the Higher Education Act. I didn't expect him to do any of it, and he did it. And this is something that, if I said early on, Biden's going to do nothing on student loan debt, everybody on the left would have been like, you're right, he's going to do nothing. Now he does 5, 6 different things on it, and it's like people go, no, doesn't count. I'm not saying what he's doing is perfect. Obviously, the best thing to do is to wipe it all out through executive order, and he has the authority to do that. That'd be the best thing to do. He didn't do that, but can we at least acknowledge the facts of what went down?
No.
And I see this rugged insistence. Honestly, it's like Biden derangement syndrome among some people on the left, and it's like Democrat derangement syndrome among some people on the left. The fact that we can't all agree very quickly that, well, obviously Democrats are not 10 times better than Republicans. They're 100 times better than Republicans. And even if you are somebody who's a purist and you're on the left, you can acknowledge a W in the instances you get it while still pushing for more. I mean, a perfect example is what's happening in Minnesota right now. Minnesota has a 1-seat Democrat majority. We got universal free school meals, legal weed, carbon-free electricity by 20.
Literally, yeah. Let us say they get literally 1 extra seat in the Senate, and they enact fucking Leninism. In no time, they're like, do you guys remember that clip of them reading through like the Republican proposals, like really quickly, like because they're all like ignoring them. They're like, nope, you're not getting any of this shit. We're moving on. We're getting to my points. And then their points are all like left populist shit. It's so fucking based. It's so based. Oh, was that Michigan? That was, okay, that was Michigan. But same point, right? Like same fucking thing, you know? Midwestern Democrats, man, built different.
2040. Tax rebates for the working class up to $1,300 if you make under $150,000 a year. 12 weeks paid family leave, 12 weeks paid sick leave. They banned conversion therapy. They did red flag laws for guns. They did universal background checks for guns. They did automatic voter registration, public free college if you make under $80K, a ban on PFAs, which is the forever chemicals, $2.2 billion increase in K-12 school funding, sectoral bargaining for nursing home workers. These things are all not little wins. They are huge wins. And I still see this insistence like we're back in 2016 or something where people are like, no, Democrats and Republicans are either equally bad or actually jujitsu move, Republicans are the lesser evil. And I think it's idiotic. It's doomerist. It's nihilist. It's people who are refusing to acknowledge reality, and they'd rather narrative hump all day talking about Democrats are so bad, Democrats are so bad, Democrats are so bad, but oh yeah, I'm a leftist.
Going back to the student debt point, it is kind of telling to me
Without fail, man. Literally, without fucking fail. Just incredible. Incredible. Just phenomenal. No notes. No notes. I can't. What is there to even say?
Kyle, that you so quickly, you injected your own low subjective, personal, and low expectations into the argument to say, well, because Joe Biden did more than I subjectively believed was possible, I am going to, you're accusing me of minimizing the accomplishments. I think that you might be minimizing his failures and the extent to which that he knowingly, it seems, lied about what he was willing to do and, in fact, dramatically underachieved his campaign promises. And for you, that might be a hop, skip, and a jump. Okay, but he did
Just
more than
disbelief.
I expect. You're setting your expectations lower than the expectations that he set for the American public in the context of his campaign. And I
literally, her argument here is that Biden did not accomplish every single one of his campaign promises, a statement which could apply to every politician to have ever existed in all of human history, with no exceptions, like every single time. He's also exceeded his campaign promises massively, you know, with like the union shit. Like nobody told me that he would be fucking Karl Marx on unions. I think that's cool, personally. Again, I don't think there's much of a point in rationally analyzing her positions because, as we've established, she doesn't have any. Her shifting immediately between he didn't meet my expectations, comma, but then again, I didn't expect anything from him anyway, is enough of an indication that, like, all of this to her is just maintaining a certain affect for the benefit of her online audience. So yeah. Honestly, I'm here for Crystal and Kyle kicking ass because they definitely are, you know, really well. And I can really hear the passion with which Kyle is speaking on this too. His frustration that he has to deal with shit like this. I'm really glad that he had this conversation with her too, because I know there are people in Kyle's audience who have this tendency, and it's, you know, they need to be shaken to reality because it's really dumb. It's really, really dumb. How do you think somebody like BJG gets an audience? Well, I'll tell you a story. I don't know what's going on in her head, but I have a pretty good idea. Brianna Joy Gray is a smart woman. She went to Harvard Law School. And people who go to Harvard Law School are psychopaths. She's talented and intelligent, and she managed to get a position as the press secretary for the Bernie Sanders presidential campaign in 2020. And that was a pretty good ticket, you know, in terms of where you're going to go in life. That's a pretty good place to be. But then he didn't win. And when it became clear that he couldn't win, I think that Brianna Joy Gray recognized that this was not a career option that would hold. And she had a couple of directions she could take things in. And she saw that after Bernie lost the primary, there were a lot of Bernie supporters who were very disaffected, very nihilistic, very doomer about the political process. And she saw that, and maybe initially out of some sincerity, but I think mostly out of a sharkish interest in making money off this audience, sought to appeal to them directly with one of the Chapo boys, because the Chapo podcast also themselves did this massively, this like doomer shit post-Bernie losing the primary. And she has since disingenuously appealed to that audience with the very specific and narrow intention of appealing to them in an aesthetic sense. She isn't a doomer herself. I don't think she is, no. I think that in order to be a real doomer, you have to genuinely believe in it's so over, bros. And I don't think she actually believes that, because that would require her to have convictions. Listen to her. Listen to how she said, "I'm not scared of Trump." That is an incredibly silly statement to make if you are paying attention and you are a left-leaning person in this country. She's not scared because she knows that as a cosmopolitan champagne socialist, she can just skip town if she needs to. It doesn't matter for her. She would just leave the country and then continue to produce the exact same content, blaming the Democrats for not sufficiently doing enough to prevent Trump from taking power and ending democracy. It wouldn't affect her, you know, her income stream. But I think that's what drives her mostly. I think she's a disgusting woman. And I have no respect for her. You know, I say a lot of mean stuff about a lot of people, but I want to be clear that for all the negative things that I've said about Crystal Ball, I do think she believes things. I know for an absolute fact, with no doubt, not even the slightest doubt, that Kyle Kulinski believes things, many things. I have a lot of respect for him. But Brianna Joy Gray occupies a very specific and very low position in how I feel about people.
Completely respect and appreciate that that doesn't bother you as much as it bothers me. I don't know if it's because I have experienced six-figure student debt. I don't know your life. I'm not
Harvard Law.
trying to make any presumptions about it. I don't know if it's because I had a certain kind of life experiences, or that other people who kind of share my view have these kind of life experiences. But for millions of us, 44 million in fact, that kind of bait and switch is unforgivable when you recognize, as you have both recognized, that it was in his power to sign an executive order to deliver overwhelmingly for the people whose votes he needs right now. So the argument is not with me.
What is this tone she's adopting all of a sudden? This is a very common rhetorical tactic. She has shifted into this conciliatory, well, this just affects me personally, like emotional tone, because on a factual basis, she knows that she can't possibly compete with Kyle and Crystal. She understands this, so she's backing up to this, well, listen, maybe it's not such a big deal to you, but personally, with my experience with student debt, I just don't know if I can overlook this harsh betrayal of... So she's using this as a way to avoid engaging with the actual factual material here. Does she like Jimmy Dore? Yes, Jimmy Dore does the same grift as her. In a slightly different direction, but fundamentally the same. Brianna Joy Gray appeals to doomer, ineffective leftists who feel disenfranchised and who are politically disengaged. And Jimmy Dore appeals to independent to populist right-leaning people who just want to hear about how Biden wants to lock everyone up and Fauci wants to inject you and such and such and such.
The argument is with the millions of Americans who feel betrayed by Joe Biden and his campaign promises. If we have a contract agreement for you to fix the hole in my roof and I give you $100, and you come into my house and instead you restage my living room and it looks beautiful, that simply wasn't the agreement. And so I am fine. I'm happy to acknowledge the furniture placement is gorgeous. I love the floral arrangements, but that's not what we bargained for. And if your desire is to push the Democratic Party left, you have to, Chris Hedges says this all the time, it's a politics of fear. If you are more afraid of electing Trump than the Democratic Party is.
That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, because again, this logic frees her of ever having to take any accountability for anything. What she's essentially saying is the material facts are irrelevant. No matter what happens, no matter who's better than who, no matter what, nothing will change the fact that I didn't get this one specific promise that was delivered to me. And for that reason, I can never support Biden under any circumstances. Biden could do literally anything and it wouldn't matter because he didn't cancel my Harvard Law student debt. What's the proper way to counter this emotional appeal, or best? I think that what Kyle and Crystal are going to do, because they're both smart people, is they are going to lean a little bit in with the sympathy, but then counter with the factual retort, which is the best way to handle it. You can't let Brianna Joy Gray disingenuously set the standard for the conversation. You have to keep it facts-based, because if you let it go into emotional narratives, Brianna Joy Gray is genuinely a manipulative bitch. She is very willing, like on at the drop of a hat, she is very, 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 very willing to turn it into like a big feels fest where she unironically like does the toxic manipulator thing to try to get you to abandon logic in support of like a you know what I'm going on about. So you can't let her do that.
You are never going to be able to exert any leverage on them at all. And I understand that's a risky position. I understand Trump getting reelected is scary. I understand that there are meaningful ways in which he's hurt real people in real ways.
Meaningful ways.
I understand all of that. And we just have a difference of opinion about what the priorities are. You said in that viral clip, Crystal, if your priority is reelecting the Democratic Party, then X, Y, and Z. And I think that was good that you said that because you articulated what the priority is for you.
No, that is not the priority for me. The policy is the priority for me, Brie. And I think you know that. And I think it's disingenuous to say otherwise.
Yes!
Just a quote
let me just say, though. Is it
good
worth,
rebuttal?
I mean, I think you care a lot about the labor movement, right?
Sure.
So is it worth letting that baby be smothered in the crib in order to what? I mean, that's the piece that I don't understand. I understand all of your critique of Joe Biden. I think it's
Yeah, a good way to reframe this is to put the onus on her, to say, okay, it sucks that you didn't get what you wanted, but what you're basically saying is that because you didn't get your specific, like, single issue advocacy thing, that you are willing to torpedo the labor movement in this country and subject it to the whims of Republican governance, when we know that it'll be bad for it, just because you didn't get what you want. Are you okay with that? And of course, she is okay with that because grifter, et cetera, et cetera. But like, I think that's a good way of framing it, like to make it perfectly clear. Like, okay, you're willing to trade all these good things for nothing because you're a brat, because you're acting like a brat, basically.
reasonable. Okay, I actually am not as strong as Kyle in terms of the intentions on
more
the student
of a Biden
loan
bro
debt,
than she
right?
is, for sure. And she gets accused of being a bigger one than me, but that's a side point.
I understand your critiques of Joe Biden very well. Many of them, if not all of them, I basically share. What I don't understand is just simply a tactical question of how focusing on a third-party effort gets us towards the goals that we share. That's the piece that, to me, recent history proves it has the complete opposite effect, whereas we do see actual progress that is possible made through the Democratic primary process. And I know you accept that. Like, you're not a Marianne hater. I'm not putting that on you whatsoever.
Marianne.
But I don't understand how risking the reelection of Trump and allowing a Trump union-busting NLRB to quash what is the most hopeful thing happening in American politics, which is the labor movement. I don't understand how that moves us forward. Like, that just doesn't compute for me.
Well, for one, I'd say, and I don't mean to at all minimize the value of this latest ruling.
Except that's all she's been doing. Notice how easily she slips into the like ooh therapy voice shit. Where like on at the drop of a hat, you know, yeah, right into the like why are you raising your voice at me for all the horrible things that I'm saying? I hate that shit. Gas keep girl boss
have been
gate
heartened
light
by the energy and the gains made by the labor movement prior to that. Over the last few years,
which were enabled by the Biden NLRB. I mean, there were keys.
Based.
The workers get all the, listen, they do the work. I'm not trying to take anything away from them. But there were key decisions that were made in the Starbucks organizing drive in particular, in the Amazon labor union drive as well, that enabled those workers to do their thing that wouldn't happen under Trump.
It feels as though, one, the question has been asked and answered several times. You don't agree with my priority. But
no, I still don't understand it. And I'm may just be dense, but explain again.
I agree with Kyle that ranked choice voting is a priority.
Yeah.
I believe that getting the Green Party more powerful, getting them federal matching funds, enables them to join in the Libertarian Party, which has been the most successful advocate for ranked choice voting in the country, to continue to further those efforts. My vote for Joe Biden does nothing to advance what I think will be the ultimate path toward left victory in the United States, which is getting rid of the corporate duopoly. I don't see voting for Joe Biden as advancing that core effort at all.
I've seen it said before that this kind of political advocacy, which again, to be clear, she does not believe in, her audience does. You know, like I'm not saying Brianna Joy Gray believes in this, but this kind of rhetoric, this like, you know, it doesn't matter what happens on the path. It doesn't matter how many elections we lose, whatever it takes to end the corporate duopoly, something that will not happen under the methods prescribed by her. I've heard it compared to the way that Christians will talk about the rapture, where a whole bunch of political meandering in the meantime becomes irrelevant because you believe in this like great day of awakening down the line, which will happen inevitably. And you just have to be there to witness it. So everything that happens along the way is comparatively immaterial, you know. And sort of trivial in a way, like not really even worth focusing on. And I see that so much in the way this discussion happens, where it seems like, well, nothing actually matters because there's only one thing that matters, and that's the Great Awakening, the rapture, you know, the revolution, whatever, and everything on the way there is like, yeah, a weird kind of suicidal ideation in a way, where people will fantasize about their lives going out in a blaze of glory for a revolutionary action that isn't going to happen, but they fixate and they fantasize on it, and it doesn't, you know, it's a way of giving themselves an excuse to disengage, because they're not like those other normies that are just not paying attention. They're paying attention and consciously choosing to be totally fucking useless. You know, like this is a deliberate decision.
So ranked choice voting is kind of like, I'm just trying to understand, is like the end all be all. That's the #1 priority. And so you would actually support the Libertarian Party, the American Constitution Party, the Forward Party, whatever, if that it advanced that goal, and that's the priority over everything else. I'm just trying to understand.
Would I personally support an effort by any of those parties to advance ranked choice voting? Yeah, of course.
No, but would you support those parties? Like, because ranked choice voting is so important.
Why would
to
I
you?
when I could vote for the Green Party that actually shares my ideals as well?
Well, I'm just trying to understand where your priorities lie. Is it like you're basically a single issue voter and it's ranked choice voting?
Well, it's not a single issue. It's breaking the corporate duopoly. That's it. This is the fundamental issue. I think that for many people, they are very wary of validating what they see as a two-headed snake. And this comes back to your concern, Kyle, about people not willing to acknowledge these successes. I think that we all understand that there is a way that the two corporate parties play off of each other. Democrats get to keep lowering the bar because the Republicans are worse. They both play these.
Then why are they raising the bar? If that logic was true, then why are Democrats currently raising the bar? Why would Biden preside over an NLRB operating, no doubt, fully with his awareness and permission? He's certainly not publicly contesting them, and do all of these good things that nobody expected him to do, if that's the argument, you know? It doesn't make any sense.
Culture war games back and forth with each other, where at the end of the day, we're told we gotta go vote for the Democrats because gay rights and trans rights and black rights and immigrant rights and all of these rights are on the line. And I said this in 2020 as well. It's not that those arguments aren't true. The question is, how do we ever disentangle ourselves from that? Because it's always going to be the case that some worser thing is coming down the pike precisely because we've enabled that to be the case. And many people, and I don't feel quite this way, but many people feel as though there is an energy.
Yeah, it's not that it's not true that the rights of all these minority groups are on the line and American democracy is on the line and everything's going to get worse. It's not that it's not true. It's just that I don't care, you know, actually, if you think about it.
That happens with even paying attention and voting in these general elections. I think that your points about what's happened on the state level in Minnesota, et cetera, are much stronger. I know that, for example, Sabby Sabs is always making the case that, you know, don't forgo electoral politics, focus more on what's happening on the local level. And I think that is a perfectly reasonable argument to make as well. But I do think that there is a failure to recognize the extent to which there is a validation that takes place of the status quo, that people are trying to negotiate as they reckon with real gains that the Biden administration has effectuated.
Yeah, so let me respond to that. I don't want to validate the status quo as much as I want to acknowledge the positive things that exist and have happened recently, which I think is some evidence that in some ways, limited, but some ways, we are moving in a better direction. So let me share a point of agreement, because we've been arguing the whole time. It'd be nice to have a point of agreement real quick. If we wake up tomorrow and there's ranked choice voting everywhere, I would be the biggest Green Party simp on the planet.
Yeah, to be clear, by the way, and it's very important to remember this, throwing your vote away for a third party that won't do anything is not challenging the status quo. It's the opposite. Voter apathy and something that is mathematically equivalent to voter apathy, aka throwing your vote away on a third party, these are not challenging the status quo. The status quo operates on apathy. That is perfectly in line with the status quo. You are doing exactly what they want you to do. You are not defying the system by voting for an ineffectual third party. There we go.
I would be insufferable. I would basically spend every day advocating for the Green Party. The reason I don't do that is because we don't have ranked choice voting, and I do feel like the choice is effectively just down to a Democrat or Republican in the general election, whoever they may be. Now, having said that, I don't want to validate the status quo. I just want to let everybody know in some ways we are moving in a good direction. You brought up the state parties there. There are 6 states now that did free school meals for kids. And in some of those states, that's even breakfast and lunch. And
she doesn't
we're not going to be surprised to hear this. Those are Democratic states. And you have the Republican Study Committee, which is basically 3/4 of the House GOP. They're pushing to ban any and all states from doing free school meals for kids. They released this in their priority. So when I look at that, I feel like I try to hold the two thoughts in my mind at the same time. I want Cornel West to be president, but I also know that given how structurally deficient and biased the system is right now, that's not going to happen. So given that, yes, I would prefer. Let me ask you this, because I feel like this is a better way to put it. Forget about voting. Voting's irrelevant, right? Let's just say it's election night 2024. It is all of our worst nightmare, Biden versus Trump. not voting, but that night when you know it's going to be Biden or Trump winning, are you sitting there like, yeah, of course I would prefer Biden win over Trump?
Honestly,
it's like 50-50.
She can't. Yeah, she can't say it. Yep,
Okay.
she can't. Yeah, literally. Again, this is the audience she appeals to. The only way a person who claims to be left-leaning could sincerely believe this is through brain damage. Like, she can't do it because of her audience. It's it. It's literally she makes money off of people who will not give her Patreon money if she ever says anything positive about Biden. Completely psychotic.
Okay. All right.
that's
That's an answer.
It's not
Look,
my party.
that's
I
an
know
answer.
That's
It's an answer.
radical, and people are going to be very upset with me. I don't care. I
I
don't
think
care. That's
there will be people who agree with you. I don't think you.
I know.
Yeah.
They're my audience.
Yeah,
And I have come to this position after talking with, I got to say, I loved Colin. I'm sad that they're
Notice that I think that's actually a very telling answer right there. Because Brianna Joy Gray understands that her entire living is sort of based on the perpetual loyalty of her small audience, relatively small. You know, she's not like colossal or whatever. She's not like Jimmy Dore-sized or whatever. But when she says, when Kyle says there will be people who agree with you, and she says her audience, I think that's kind of a tacit admission of her mind state there. She's thinking about her audience right now. If somebody told me after I made a position, oh, well, some people will agree with you, my first thought would be, oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I would think so, because this position is sensible and people will agree with me on it. But instead, her immediate thought is, yeah, my audience, because her mind is on her audience, because when she's saying crazy shit like that, that's what she's thinking about. She's thinking of the Patreon number, you know? Does that make sense? I feel like that might sound like a reach, but I actually think it's a very solid argument. I genuinely, as a person who has many times been in a position to say something like, of course people would agree with me. My position is good. My mind has never gone to yeah, I think it's a sensible read.
shutting it down. But part of the reason I loved it is because I would talk to people who were calling me. I would hear their doors dinging in the background because they were doing food delivery, or their EMTs, or they're this gets characterized as a privileged position that you don't care who wins, Trump or Biden. My experience is the people who have been taking this position, this is just anecdotal, tend to be people at the lower end of the economic spectrum who do feel like their lives aren't meaningfully different under a Trump versus a Biden, and who would.
This is bullshit. This is bullshit, by the way. The people on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum, the poorer people, their disaffectedness comes more from a lack of education than it does awareness. When people are highly educated on politics and they're poor, they are incredibly likely to be left-leaning. Like, college-educated poor people are the most likely to be left-leaning or active advocates for any kind of sensible change. The idea that this insane position that Trump and Biden are basically the same is some kind of noble working class proletarian belief. Oh, the good, honest, disenfranchised people of America, they don't really see a difference. If they don't see a difference, they're either lying or retards. And I don't think poor people are automatically retarded. I'm sorry. I just don't. I don't believe that. Poor people are the ones who stand to gain the most from Biden being president over Trump.
Rather rock the boat and throw a monkey wrench in the machinery if there's even
bait
a
or mental
fraction of a sliver of a
retardation,
chance
call it.
that it has some outcome other than what we've been experiencing for their entire lives.
Fair enough. You gave a direct answer, so I respect it.
The other thing I would say, though, because you said you're basically an accelerationist. You think things need to get better in order for them to get worse.
I feel,
worse in order
given
for
my
them to get
own
better.
class privilege, I am reluctant to personally put those wheels into motion, but I very much respect particularly people who, I just was talking about, who do feel that way. I think that's a legitimate perspective.
Yep. Here she does it again. She advocates her position isn't accelerationist so much as it is psychotic. But then she's like, oh, well, I personally, with my privilege, wouldn't advocate for it, even though I have been this entire time. But I've talked with many noble working class people who gave me permission to make these arguments on their behalf. I won't take ownership of the fact that I've essentially admitted that I don't give a fuck about what happens to the people of this country who will be hurt under a Trump presidency. But no, the imagined, the noble savages in my audience have given me permission to say this, actually.
I feel like it's not my place to say, let's make the world burn, because I'm going to be okay in either way. But I am open to that perspective.
Colors your view and how you approach these things and why you wouldn't really care whether it's Biden or Trump.
Yeah. I remember the night of 2016. I wasn't, I don't know, how did you guys feel? I wasn't personally devastated.
So,
I felt
that's a
in
great
some
question.
weird
Let me
way
answer.
vindicated.
That's a very...
Oh, yeah, dude. Wow, that is so fucking telling. That's so telling. Oh, yeah. When Trump won in 2016, I felt vindicated because my only position is distinguishing myself from liberals. I have no meaningful beliefs and no actual principles when it comes to the difference between liberalism and fascism. I don't give a shit about minorities. I don't give a shit about anyone in America. Everyone will be hurt by this, and I don't care because I get to feel vindicated. I feel special for being a person who said that Hillary was bad. I was one of the few people smart and unique enough to take the incredibly rare take that Hillary Clinton kind of sucks, you know? And for that, I am rewarded with vindication.
This is what we have been telling them was going to happen the whole time.
So I agree with you completely about 2016, right? And I voted for Jill Stein in 2016. 2020, I didn't vote for Biden. I didn't vote for anybody. It was sort of like, no, seriously, I think they're roughly equal. I think Biden's around the edges better, but I thought he was going to be as conservative a president as he was a senator. So I was like, okay, whatever. But on the night of 2020, I was actually like, oh, for the love of God, I hope Trump loses. And, you know, that it's because I see everything he did. I mean, look, I can run through all the bad things Biden did. That's my standard rant that I've been doing for a long time now. But when you look at Trump, I mean, I don't want to sidetrack the conversation here, but like the 91 felonies that he's charged with for defrauding the United States with fake electors and effectively trying to steal the election. Like, to me, I kind of agree with people who are like, on that alone, I mean, this is fucking crazy. We've never been here before. We're talking about the peaceful transfer of power is genuinely in question now in a way that it never was before.
If I remember correctly, BJG has downplayed January 6th a bunch of times. So I don't know if she's going to address that directly, because if she does, she'll have to do this big thing about how, like, I don't know if she'll engage with it.
Let me say, in terms of my view on Trump,
Oh, no.
the reason why I'm not even a little bit sympathetic towards the accelerationist view is, first of all, I just think, like,
sorry, I thought
things get
BJG
worse.
was
Sometimes they just get
talking for a
worse.
second.
And I think there's a real possibility that, you know, we go in the, rather than a leftist utopia, we go in the direction of like a fascist police state. I think that's a real possibility on the table. And if things get worse, I think that's probably more likely than the outcome we would like to see. But specifically on Trump, in some ways, the worst part of the Trump era has been not that it has created a divisive politics, because I believe in a divisive politics. It's just about where the divides should be. And he has made politics all about just how do you feel about the person of Donald Trump. And I think that that has been a significant barrier in terms of making any of the arguments that we want to make for a different world and better policies, et cetera. Because, yeah, you could say, oh, they'll just say Ron DeSantis or whoever is worse than Trump. But you got to acknowledge there is something a little special about the dude who's going to like do a January 6th and like, you know, have an insurrection, et cetera. He's a particularly potent villain that is weaponized very effectively. And so it creates a divisive politics that is divided along.
This is actually a really good point. Trump's cult of personality and all of the culture war shit surrounding him makes it really difficult to pull Republicans over with populist left talking points, because they are so bought in on like the Trump train that it kind of like overwhelms any other politic. Like, it's really difficult to have an argument with a Republican right now that isn't just like wokeness this, Trump that. It's like the range of acceptable political expression with them has been limited to a small group of thought terminating cliches that are really difficult to do anything about.
All the wrong lines. So that's why I'm not sympathetic to the view that like, oh, maybe if we elect Trump, somehow that'll make things better in an a process that's 3 years down the road or 3 decades down the road that no one can really explain. I'm not sympathetic to that because I've seen the way that Trump has made our politics worse in real time in a way that has not been beneficial.
Well, for one, I would say to the extent that we are inching closer to fascism as opposed to the socialist utopia, we got exactly here doing vote blue no matter who. So I don't think that any kind of concerted Green Party campaign or effort, third
But
party.
that's not really
if we
true.
voted blue no matter who, Al Gore would have been president. We would
invalid.
have never had Bush, and Hillary would have beaten Trump. So vote blue no matter who would have been a whole bunch of standard milquetoast Democrats.
This is like saying like, well, you know, you think that we should maintain clean drinking water, but we've had clean drinking water laws for decades now, and we got Trump from that. Like, it's a complete non sequitur. It's like, oh, well, you know, this one thing that I'm orienting my entire fucking grift around, like, I will make everything about that jibber jabber.
Now you're making the argument that it's third party spoilers' fault that Al Gore wasn't elected in 2000.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say
They
that. I'm
didn't
saying
literally.
you-
He did
you
not
accused,
say that. He
no,
did
the
not
blue no
say
matter who
that.
argument. I'm saying if people had quote unquote voted blue no matter who, Democrats would have won every election. That's the point I'm making.
Well,
the vote blue no matter who means everybody votes
so
Democrat.
for one, more registered Democrats in Florida voted for George Bush.
I know, I agree with
than
you.
they
He
did
didn't talk about
Al
it. He
Gore.
just like switching
Al
to
Gore
talking points.
failed to win his own state.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I agree with you on
So
that.
I'm struggling with the argument here. What is George Bush? Then the Supreme
No, you just
Court
said
of it
we
all.
got where we
So
are
what
now
is-
because of vote blue no matter who. And the point I was making is in a real quote unquote vote blue no matter who, there would have been no Republicans elected if everybody votes Democrat. That's the point I'm making.
Vote blue no matter who doesn't mean everyone votes Democrat. Vote blue no matter who means the Democratic Party uses coercion and guilt to get people to vote for it instead of delivering on what polls demonstrate
What?
overwhelming majorities of Americans want, which is left policies. That's what the pernicious nature of vote blue no matter who.
The
is that it
pernicious
absolves the Democratic
nature.
Party of having to look at polls that say 2/3 of Americans don't want Joe Biden to run because he's too old, that 88% of Democratic voters want Medicare for all, that 60% of Floridians, a state that went for Trump, wanted a $15 minimum wage. But Joe Biden, whose praises we've been singing a lot today, purposefully stripped on order of the parliamentarian from must-pass COVID legislation so that one core promise that he made to Bernie as Bernie dropped out after like 3 days of not being, endorsed after 3 days after dropping out, was immediately thrown under the bus.
But
How would any of these be better under Trump? They wouldn't, but that's not the point. That's the nefarious. That's the reason why she centers her advocacy on this asinine standard of like well, this is my principle, this is my standard, because none of this holds to any scrutiny when compared. Like every single thing, every single issue, Democrats are better than Republicans, except if you'll remember when she was asked directly about like Trump v. Biden, she was like, well, actually, because Biden has been supplying Azov Nazis in Ukraine with trillions of dollars of American weapons on the taxpayers' dime, actually, by bringing us closer to World War III and denying Putin his glorious effort to protect the people of the Donbass from ethnic cleansing from Zelensky, actually, Biden is worse than Trump. So, again, you're not going to get anything from her.
Let me just to interject real quick, because I don't want you to get the misimpression that I'm not aware of the negative things around Joe Biden. He also said he was going to get back in the Iran agreement, did not get back in the Iran agreement. We're still terribly cooked to Saudi Arabia as a country.
I found this clip of her where she has Glenn Greenwald on as a guest, and they were unironically blaming the Democrats for January 6th.
Desire to use words like part of the reaction, the desire to call it a coup, the desire to use words like insurrection, the desire to impeach Trump at this stage is because Democrats want to make sure this has a long-term political cost, not just a kind of like legal cost.
By the way, this clip is from January 14th, 2021. This was a week after the insurrection attempt.
Or to use this in a shock doctrine moment to expand surveillance state or what have you, but to say we want this to stick, we want to stigmatize Republicans with this for the long term.
First of all, I'm not entirely sure that the motive of all Democrats or most Democrats.
Yeah, there's two pedophiles on this particular episode of the podcast.
Democrats is what you said. I think that's probably the motive of some. I think part of the motive here is to humiliate, to kind of vindicate their view that they've been saying all along, that this is a totally illegitimate and tyrannical, despotic, threatening administration, the likes of which we've never seen before, on a different plane than the evil of George Bush and Dick Cheney, and to finally get what they've wanted for so long, impeaching him, removing him from office, even with 3 days left, is kind of like a satisfaction of that thirst for vengeance and to humiliate his movement. This is an article.
Dude, like literally, dude. Fucking, hey, calling out the Republican Party for attempting an insurrection to overthrow the U.S. government. You know, you're just like trying to demonize them.
In the Atlantic, kind of the pinnacle of liberal smugness by Caitlin Flanagan. And this is in her first paragraph how she describes the people who went to this Capitol event. She said, here they were, a coalition of the willing. Deadbeat dads, porn enthusiasts, slow students, and MMA fans. They had heard the rebel yell, packed up their Confederate flags and Trump banners, and GPS their way to Washington. After a few wrong turns, they pulled into the swamp with bellies full of beer and sausage McMuffins, maybe a little high on Adderall, ready to get it done. I think that a lot of what's going on is that these people know that they are scorned and looked down upon by the ruling class elite, especially the one that's about to really take over in a way that's almost unchallengeable. And the more you humiliate...
Right after the insurrection attempt failed, he's saying, oh no, now that Biden is going to become president, he is like an unchallengeable elite who's taking power. Because like he's fully behind the coup attempt. And Brianna Joy Gray is just going along with this.
Them and make them feel powerless, the more you take away from them their ability to organize and express that rage, it's going to find an outlet in more destructive ways. And that is, I think, something that I think is really worth worrying about.
That's my takeaway from this podcast with sometimes one, sometimes two pedophiles on it, is that when you do a fascist insurrection, it's actually evil that the liberal elites try to demonize you for doing the fascist insurrection attempt. Yeah, just so you know what kind of person we're dealing with here.
As they do a genocide where he's still sanctioning Afghanistan. He's super conservative on the border, almost to the point of being as extreme.
MLK once said a riot is the voice of the unheard. Yeah, he was referring to the Confederate States of America when he wrote that. MLK was like, and I decry the white moderate elitism with which they condemn the Southerner for expressing their right to states' rights. I remember.
Extremist Trump. He did the Willow Project. He didn't give us a public option. He didn't give us $50 minimum wage. He didn't get the original Build Back Better
So
through.
true.
He screwed the rail workers union, which is something you very potently covered. So I'm not here to pretend like Joe Biden only did good things. I'm trying to do, to the best of my ability, explain what I think are the facts on both sides of the equation. Here are the good things he did, here are the bad things he did, and then people could just make up their own mind as to how they want to proceed in a showdown between Trump or Biden, who they would prefer.
Do you think that Biden is better than Obama?
I'm open to that argument. But again, my fundamental, what purpose does that serve for me?
I think it's everything, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's like, is the person going to do good
Can't
things?
answer,
that
can't
move
say
us in a better
anything even
direction?
remotely.
Especially, you know, I brought up labor unions a million times, but for me, that's really central, or are they not? And I guess my question for you is, because you were sort of like, all right, let's acknowledge, sure, let's say Biden's 10 times better than Trump. Like, how much better would he have to be before you're like, okay, it's not just lesser evil, it's not just vote blue no matter who, it's actually worth voting for this person?
He would have had to have done everything that he could have done.
So no politician would ever make that
he could have done, in my opinion.
Even in comparison,
what kind of statement is that?
I just think.
Wait a minute. I'm not saying he could have.
I'm not taking a shot at you. I'm just saying I don't think politics. Even somebody like Bernie, who's principled, I don't think he even delivers on everything.
He has to fulfill miracles. I'm not saying he has to accomplish everything that he says he wants to do. I'm saying he has to have done everything he could have done.
A completely nebulous standard that could be moved at any point with like no way of tracking it. Again, she can't say anything specific like if he did these things, because then again she would be held accountable to any kind of real position. It just has to be like a general vibe that she can pull away from.
You do a lot as president. You do a lot.
So this is the issue with Biden. Not that he didn't wave a wand and create Medicare for all, because we can all acknowledge that even if it were Bernie Sanders, that would have been an uphill battle. But
that's fucking bullshit. She was literally just saying that Biden is a bad candidate because most Americans want Medicare for all or something. And we all know for an absolute fact that if Biden had done the all the debt cancellation that she wants, she would be saying, sorry, I just can't support somebody who doesn't want Medicare for all or who hasn't done Medicare for all. Guaranteed. That's the easiest call in the universe. I have warped to a different timeline and come back, and I've confirmed, actually, in the blink of an eye, that she does that exact thing in the universe where we get our student debt cancellation. Yeah, the goalposts come with wheels attached.
What I choose to focus on my show, and what I really appreciate about reporting by people like David Sirota and The Lever, is that he exposes the gap between what these people have done and what was literally possible, either because of the nature of executive orders, whether it's walking us through the parliamentarian brouhaha and the $15 minimum wage, because so much of neoliberal democratic politics is obscuring that they really could have done things to make lives better for all of us behind the veneer of insidery Hill jargon, or the idea that the Republicans are the big baddies that couldn't allow us anything to pass. And I believe that my job is to cut through those narratives, to expose to the public.
I mean, it is literally true that the student debt relief would have passed if the Republicans had supported it. Yeah. Like every criticism you can lob at the Democrats, like everything they failed to get done, if you had the Republicans act the same way the Democrats do with their votes, then it all would have gotten done. If the Republicans were Democrats, then through the voting results, we would have consistently like every single thing on the table that we would get. It's always the Republicans that are worse. There's not like a tit for tat here. There's no like, well, the Republicans are good on this and bad at this.
That the Democratic Party is making choices. They're not just
he could have done Medicare
in the football.
I'll go even further than you. I agree. He could have done Medicare for all with the stroke of a pen, and it was David Dayen over at the American Prospect who laid this out, who said basically, look, under a national emergency, you have the authority under Obamacare to basically do single payer healthcare, and they did it, I think, in Libby, Montana.
I don't think it's a good idea to try to establish a nationwide healthcare precedent that's meant to be the bedrock of like our entire welfare system off of an emergency executive action. I think that'd be really, really bad.
Because there was some issue there with health. So he had the ability to do it. So I agree with you. He could have done that. He didn't do that. The only point I was trying to make is that even with somebody like Bernie, I think there would be a little bit of a gap between what he says when he's on the podium and if he were to actually be president. I think a guy like Bernie would deliver on way more of the stuff that he says because I think he's more honest among government officials. But, certainly Biden, there's definitely going to be a gap there between what he says and what he would do. But to be fair, like I said before, I do think Biden kind of ran as he wasn't as conservative as like Mike Bloomberg in the 2020 race, but he was pretty conservative. He was running as a pretty conservative Democrat, in my opinion.
Yeah, he was, but he still said, we're going to get a $15 minimum wage. We're going to cancel.
I'm not arguing with you. I don't know why you're I'm not arguing with you, Bree.
But Kyle, if you say that he ran as a conservative, what it sounds like you're doing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is a furtherance of you saying the bar was on the ground. He fulfilled my expectations.
It was, yeah.
But what I'm telling
he surpassed my expectations.
But he surpassed whatever. What I'm saying
there's a significant difference between those two things.
To you is that you have constructed a bar that's lower than Biden constructed for himself.
No, but I don't agree with that. I was going based off of his commentary at the time.
He literally said and ran on
nothing will fundamentally change.
Nothing will fundamentally change. That's true. Come on. I understand what you're saying. There are some examples to the opposite. I agree with you.
Did he not run on a $15 minimum wage? Yes or no?
He definitely did.
Did he run on canceling all student debt? Yes or no?
We're not making that
I'm not sure about.
He literally did.
I thought it was 10,000.
But hold on. We're not even
sorry, $10,000 for all people under 100.
Yeah, I thought it was that.
Wait, did Brianna Joy Gray seriously just try to front the idea that canceling all student debt was like a mainline a Biden campaign proposal? And then when Kyle's like, well, no, it was 10,000 under some circumstances. And she's like, oh, yeah, that. Because she's just like saying shit. Jibber jabber.
Arguing with you
I'm not
that
trying to
he
argue with you
couldn't
right
have done more or that he fulfilled every promise or whatever.
Okay,
but what I want to get from you, though, is in terms of how you see your role as independent media.
Yeah.
And you said you see it as exposing the gap between like the Democratic Party neoliberal rhetoric and what they actually deliver.
What they could deliver. And I do plenty of that as well. And, we feature the lever reporting a lot on Breaking Points, et cetera. But when does it become not just you're exposing the gap, but you're actually presenting a dishonest impression of the Biden administration if the positive things that do happen don't get any acknowledgement or coverage? For one, I think that there is a multi-billion-dollar liberal media sphere whose job it is,
and who your audience doesn't trust.
They don't talk about these things. They don't talk about
your
these
audience
things.
doesn't trust.
That is not my fault.
I've heard this cope from a lot of people like Brianna Joy Gray. Jimmy Dore does this as well, where people are like, hey, so you say you want to educate people, but you like don't cover all this shit that's inconvenient to your nonstop 24/7 Democrat bad narrative. And they're like, yeah, well, that's because the mainstream media covers that. Well, your audience doesn't watch MSNBC. Brianna Joy Gray audience members do not go and check fucking CNN for their information later in the day. If you are providing them a narrative which is out of the mainstream, then you have to account for the gaps in the narrative that will be created if they don't listen to anyone but you. But of course, the real reason is that she cannot say anything positive about Biden.
Have a bunch of poor people giving me $5 a month to give them something that they can't get with their cable subscription. I'm sorry, it is not my job. People are not
poor people. Yep. All of the It's, oh, well, why don't I cover any of the good things like pro-union shit that Biden has done? Well, it's because all of the noble proletariat who give me money don't give me money to report good pro-union news. I think, again, she's really giving away the grift here because she is talking about this purely in terms of finance and audience acquisition. Oh, I can't cover this pro-lefty good news. I can't cover this union stuff that happened, even though as a lefty I should be concerned with it, because, you know, the people who give me my money don't want to hear anything pro-Biden. And notice how every time she's called out to, she defers back to a kind of liberal identity politic, where all of a sudden, like with no prompting, it's, oh, the poor people in my audience, you know, oh, I'm too privileged to be an accelerationist, even though all I say are accelerationist things, but my audience has given me permission to be accelerationist. I would legitimately bet she's gets money from conservative sources just to split the left vote. I don't know if it's like a deliberate thing, but she's definitely at the very least her grifting is useful to like people on the right for sure. I mean, I don't know to what extent like there's actual money exchanging hands, but that stuff does happen pretty often, right? There was that like pro-Assad Russian money thing that like Hinkle and Jimmy Dore got, you know, and the Kremlin 100% was paying a ton of people out to lie. So, it's, you know, it's hard to say exactly. I think it's safe to say that literally everyone online who has a narrative to push gets paid to push it, except for me. I do all of this nobly and with no personal benefit, and that's why you can trust me.
Not pay me the bulk of their minimum wage salary.
No.
To have
The
them
bulk of their minimum
wage. Biden did somewhere.
It's a minimum wage salary, Kyle. How much could it possibly be per year? $10? The bulk of the minimum wage. Okay. Jesus Christ.
I'm not attacking. I just genuinely want to understand your view. So you
also,
feel
the media
like
doesn't talk about the good things I mentioned Biden do. Like, nobody talks about those.
You feel like
nobody brings those up.
Is this representative of your view? The media doesn't talk about these failings of Democrats. And so they can get the good stuff about Democrats somewhere else. I'm going to just focus on the negative things, the places where they fall short.
Yeah.
I mean, is that so you would acknowledge that if people are just consuming, for example, your podcast, that they're not getting the complete picture of what's going on?
I think that anybody consuming any one news source.
Oh, yes, the Serena Shima Award. Jimmy Dore has the honor of sharing that Assad Award with convicted pedophile Scott Ritter. Whoa. Don't misrepresent Scott Ritter like that. Twice convicted pedophile.
Particularly an independent journalist who puts out 1-hour episodes twice a week.
Oh, but you do right
many
things too.
Many
You
of
do plenty of content.
Well, sure. I mean, they're certainly not getting full news if they're watching Rising, but the content that I'm responsible for in terms of picking topics. No, like the episode I'm going to record later today is about AI. It's a niche subject. It's not a news show, so I don't quite understand what the takeaway is from that. Of course, I'm offering what my goal is to offer to fill in the holes and what I perceive to be in the media at large.
So I understand that because that used to be much closer to my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And
I wish somebody would ask her what she wants her audience to do. She would she can't answer that because her audience is defined primarily by political uselessness. But if she was to give that an answer, it would have to be some kind of like, you know, very generic, like get out there and promote an end to the corporate duopoly. Like there's nothing meaningful here again. And why would she ever ask anything of her audience other than to give her money? You know, because that's the only thing she gives a shit about.
And I have shifted my thinking because I feel like when I only covered basically like Democratic Party sucks, this is their failures, et cetera, it began to create a misleading impression that the Republicans are better, that the Democrats never do anything good. And so it has caused me to reevaluate some of the coverage decisions that I would have made in the past.
Fucking based.
So this is not to... You can cover whatever the hell you want to cover,
because
I just wanted to understand the lens you were bringing to it because I think that makes a difference in terms of like what stories you would include and the things that you would focus on.
Well, I think that might be true if you aren't covering that Republicans are bad, which I do as well. When it's relevant, and especially when it's a coverage of why Republicans are bad that are different than what the mainstream media is doing. So, for example, I just had an exchange on my...
Yeah, Brianna Joy Gray, in fairness, Brianna Joy Gray has supplied plenty of critical content to the Republicans. For instance, after January 6th, she was extremely critical of how they failed to execute Mike Pence and the other politicians in the Capitol and establish a Trump presidency. You know, she went really hard on them for not following through and actually like succeeding in the coup. So yeah, credit where credit's due. She does cover Republican failures.
My last episode about this because my guests seem to be largely unaware of the legitimacy of the claims in the Georgia indictment against Trump. Yeah. And there is a section of the left which takes the position that, well, Trump isn't the real problem and the media is unfair to Trump and Trump derangement syndrome is what it is with Rachel Maddow and that. So I'm just not going to listen to any of those kind of arguments. I just don't care.
Right.
And I don't care about it as much as many, many other things. And I think it takes up too much energy. But I also need people to understand that it wasn't just a 1-6 thing. It was this conspiracy to overturn the election that people should take seriously. So and we cover those things as they come up. The trucker, whatever it is that comes up. We did a whole Tucker Carlson series last summer. Like,
Obama's gay. Did you know that? I'm just kidding.
I knew that. Oh shit! It ends there.
Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and.
Holy shit! That was fucking abrupt. At least we got to learn that Obama is gay. Okay, like for real, let's credit where credit's due. Kyle and Crystal knocked that shit out of the park. That was pretty fantastic. Yeah, there's no way around that. You know, not that I would want to find a way around that. I've always been willing to give credit where credit's due, even when I dislike people like Crystal. But yeah, yeah, pretty wild. Brianna Joy Gray really is like a disgusting piece of shit, huh? Like genuinely like a fucking worthless person, don't you think? Really is incredible. Do you think Crystal is realizing that her behavior might actually like backfire and have negative consequences? I've said a lot of negative stuff about Crystal in the past. I've also said that maybe she's a grifter or whatever. I shouldn't make statements like that unless it's really fucking obvious, like with Brianna Joy Gray, because it's not something that I can like literally prove, and it's usually pretty immaterial. I don't think that Crystal's behavior here is even remotely compatible with the argument that she is a grifter. Like, regardless of like broader, just because sometimes I see the Breaking Point show and the shit she says just defies belief, you know? But whatever like the broader perspective might end up being, she kicked ass here. And, you know, you should always be willing to give credit when it's due. BJG is quite manipulative, I agree. Or I admit, Vaush, she had me fooled about this earlier today. Brianna Joy Gray is really good at shifting into the, like, whiny, you know, why are people being mean to me, ooh-woo bullshit when she feels threatened or when she doesn't have a good argument to make. She does that quite a lot. Just remember, like, it goes beyond grifting. Like, Brianna Joy Gray would happily see all of you dead. If you are a person who would be threatened by a Trump administration, and you all are, every single person watching this is, like, she does not care. She has the power and the sway to make a positive difference, and she doesn't because she knows that her audience capture, it would not be to her benefit to be a good person. When BJG dropped into that teacher voice, I felt irrationally mad, like so angry. Yeah, because it's like identifiably like manipulator shit. Yeah. They also uploaded this debate to the Breaking Points channel, got dislike bombed. Yeah, because Breaking Points' audience is the majority right-wing, and obviously they're going to like Brianna Joy Gray, because all Brianna Joy Gray makes money from is disingenuously criticizing the Democrats and defending Republicans and saying that the real villain after January 6th was the Democrats because the Democrats said something snooty and liberal about the fascists. There's just, yeah. I genuinely feel like Brianna Joy Gray is one of those people who's probably best ignored. Like Jimmy Dore in a lot of ways. They are a screaming. Well, Brianna Joy doesn't really scream. That's more of a Jimmy Dore thing. But they are like a completely irrational and disconnected perspective. I think you can make an effort to reach out to their audience. Like, I will happily talk to people who like Brianna Joy Gray, but she transparently has no positions whatsoever. Like, the only thing that you can do in a conversation with her is give. I guess she falls in that category, which has been growing with more and more people over time, where if engagement with the only possible outcome that you could get from engagement with her is making her look like a fool, but you could never make her look like more of a fool than she does to herself every day while doing her content. And if that's the case, what's even the point? No Fed posting. Can't wait to get fucking ass blasted by Moonlord again. All right, well, we did it. God damn, folks.